And good morning. It is a Tuesday edition of Glenn Clark Radio and a very special Tuesday edition of the program. We will have weeks and months to continue talking about the Ravens losing the AFC Championship game. I'm good not doing that today, all due respect. Today, we continue an annual tradition here on GCR. It is our college lacrosse preview show as we will be chatting with the coaches of the 7 D1 programs in the state of Maryland, the men's D1 programs throughout the course of today's program. Our friend Patrick Stevens, who you normally hear with us on Tuesdays talking college sports, is in studio. Good morning, sir. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Glenn.
A lot to do today, obviously, and we will start it off right out of the chute. First up on the hot seat is the head coach of the Loyola Greyhounds. He, of course, is my friend and the man who I got to wonder if he's starting to second-guess whether or not he really wants to keep me out there after the last couple of seasons, but it's always a pleasure to welcome in Coach Charley Toomey to the program. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's great to chat with you as always. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning.
Absolutely, fellas. Thanks for having me on. And Glenn, you're always welcome out here at Ridley.
I appreciate.
Pat, I usually have to see you post game over in the conference room, but it's great to see you guys today for sure. It just means, with the Ravens ending, it just means it's lacrosse season now.
That is true. That is true. And you guys get things started Saturday afternoon, 1 o'clock over at Ridley Athletic Complex against Georgetown. So, let's just dive into it, right? Like, a great start, obviously, a year ago, tremendous wins. Then they had this weird sort of dip, only to rally tremendously well and come up just short of winning the Patriot League. Can you sort of take us back to a year ago and how you sort of decipher what happened with sort of such ebbs and flows during the course of the season?
That's obviously you do a lot of soul searching, through the course of the summertime, and then obviously through fall ball. And, we came out, we played with great energy. I don't think a lot was expected, going into the year, especially after the year Maryland had, to finish off with a national championship and, to open up at Ridley. I don't want to say we caught them off guard. We played really well. We played great, solid defense. I think we had a lot of guys on the offensive end that were getting their first minutes. And, I think maybe, we used the energy of Ridley to really propel us to a couple early season wins. I'm not going to take anything away from what we were able to do against Johns Hopkins, but I will say that they were missing a couple guys that are key players for themselves when they came over here. And, what happened was, quite honestly, we got 2 great wins under our belt, and we went up to Rutgers and, just lost a tough battle, to a Rutgers team that was, very competitive, very, very good throughout the year. And it rocked us a little bit. Again, our team was young. And so, it was kind of how you respond, in those moments. And, we just didn't handle it as well as we would have liked to. We talk about playing to a standard every day, and I felt like we played with a lot of emotion. And when we played with that emotion, it really, kind of propelled us to some great wins. And I think we all saw how good Army was, through the course of the year last year. That was, that's a great team that's really, kind of put themselves, in the upper echelon, in my opinion, of our league. And BU, again, another very talented team. Our league is as competitive as it gets, and has the ability to win, outside of our league. So, we kind of found our way a little bit late. Again, playing with some confidence towards the end, going into the tournament and playing against a Navy team that we had lost to. I thought we came out of that and felt pretty good about ourselves going up to BU, which in my opinion at that time was probably the class of our league, certainly offensively. And we were able to kind of come back from a large deficit, but Army proved who they were, and not only, winning our league, but kind of going on and, and winning a couple, beating a Maryland team, and then, going on deeper into the playoffs.
Charlie, when you look at the experience that you had last year, I feel like it was a real significant growing year for Luke Stout, a guy that played really well early on. Obviously, was on the come in a bench situation for a couple games, and then came on strong when reinserted into the lineup. How did he kind of handle that year, and how do you see him kind of sizing up him as you head into this season?
Yeah, I would tell you that I think that the goaltending position is certainly a strength for us going into this year. We certainly see it as one between Max Watkinson and Luke Stout. I will tell you that the team elected Luke as a captain, and so he's got that confidence kind of going into practices and into games, and we've seen him stand out, be elite. Throughout this fall and certainly into the spring. So we're real hopeful. We're going to need Luke to be on his game every game, because losing a Matt Hughes and losing a Cam Wires, that's certainly an area where we're going to continue to need to develop and grow. And in some of these tough early season games, and you saw it with Maryland last year, you're going to have to rely on north of about 15 saves to be able to get some of these wins under our belt.
You had the benefit for years of having the brothers Savio at the faceoff dot, and a year ago, Eric Pacheco kind of took that over and ended up winning 42% of his faceoffs. And I know that you and I talk about this sometimes, and it's not always just about the faceoff specialist, but how does that, I guess, one, is it definitively still Eric's job? And then two, how do you, between he and the wings, make that number grow this year?
Yeah, I've always kind of said, in Steve Vakeness, we feel very strongly about our face-off coach, and even Matt Dwan, kind of working with our wing play. I would tell you that, as a graduate student, Eric probably gets the first couple reps out there, but I would tell you also that we have a freshman who's come on and really competed. And, that's a part of the game where, I look at things defensively and I look at them from the goal out. I've got a face-off coach that I rely real heavily on to develop us there. And, I think that's going to be a position where we need to continue to develop. But the one thing that we have to do is to put ourselves in a position where if we are facing off at a 42% clip over the course of a game, maybe we've got to do some things a little bit differently, like force them back and maybe be a little more aggressive in our ride. Take some chances somewhere else to get the ball back, because you certainly hate to have a make it, take it situation, which I think we were afforded a few times more than we were comfortable with last year. So yeah, it's a work in progress for sure, but I've seen good projections that I think that he's going to be a little bit better this year. And, anytime if you're north of 50, you're probably happy there.
Charlie, a lot of familiar faces back at the offensive end this season. Adam Patra, Matthew Minikis, who had a fabulous year for you last year, Evan James, who came on strong, Davis Lindsay, Seth Higgins. It feels like there's a lot of established answers there. How has that group kind of been able to figure things out throughout the fall and the preseason? And do you expect maybe a higher degree of cohesion, given all that experience that you have coming back, than maybe a year ago when maybe some guys were in some different spots or just new to the program altogether?
Yeah, Pat, we were just talking about it the other day. We have 7 attackmen that have started games for us. And, obviously some of those guys have moved into the midfield, which kind of changes the dynamic. Maybe you're doing a little bit of inverting, bringing some guys out of the box. But that's our veteran side of the field for sure. And we need them, to handle pressure. We need them to kind of steady us, especially early in the games, get going, to have a little bit of some composure down there where maybe we can play with a lead defensively and not feel like we've got to press from that side of the field. And I think we've seen it. We've asked that group more so in practice than anything to be game-like and to really put our defense under that stress that they're going to feel, in game on Saturdays. And so, yeah, absolutely. I mean, those guys have a lot of minutes under their belt, and we need them to be veteran this year. We need them to have that composure and to lead this team.
We're chatting with Charley Toomey, Loyola lacrosse coach, here on our annual college lacrosse preview show. Coach, you lose some significant pieces defensively, obviously, in Peyton and Cam. The name that jumps out at me would be Remington Reynolds, the transfer from Rutgers. I know he's played both short stick and long stick midfield. Do you have a role already kind of carved out for him moving forward? And why was he's someone that you guys targeted?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard for us to look into that portal like some other programs and find a guy. We can't go after grad students. Remy was a young man up at Rutgers that, maybe wanted to come home, maybe wanted to put the pole back in his hand and not be a short stick.
Okay.
And so we gave him the ability to do that. And he has run with it, to be truthful with you. I anticipate him, being a starting close defenseman for us. But he's also a guy, like every kid at Rutgers, that wants to run the field. They want to play fast. And so similar to guys that we've had in the past as long poles, he can handle the ball in transition, but we really need him to kind of use his competitive nature, his footwork, his toughness, his IQ, to help us and to play, probably a lead dog on our opponent, but we certainly, it's been a couple years since he's been a close defenseman. And so he's still learning, to be in that new role. And, but we like what we're seeing and, he's going to get a ton of reps down there for sure.
You mentioned Rutgers as a team that likes to run. That's obviously been part of your program DNA for a long time now. Do you anticipate that this is a team that can push transition maybe a little bit more than what we've seen over the last couple of years?
Well, I think it starts in the goal, right? Like you got to save the ball. You got to pick the ball up off the ground to be able to do that. Obviously there's another way, and that's kind of going forward from the X. So we have to, what I've challenged them to do is we can't stop the ball. We got to save the ball. We got to catch it, and that gives you the ability, right, to just kind of get over the top. We've challenged our guys in those phases, right? Like we call it green. We want to get the odd man break. We want to push it forward. But if we're not able to, then can we play a little bit faster, off of the end line after a shot, with our attack? Being, again, that they're veteran, are we able to do things a little bit more quickly rather than to have to settle in and get into the last 15 through the spring?
Coach, I think you and I talked about this. Like, do you get a sense for, before a season, how ready a team is, like, from a leadership aspect, from a mental aspect? Like, you guys have taken some lumps the last couple of years. Do you get a sense for how driven they are to say we're the team that's going to, get back to the sort of Loyola standard of competing for championships?
I think every team's different, right? Like they develop through the course of the year. You look at who the guys elect as leaders, as captains. And yes, it's a proud group of guys. We recruited them here when they got here. Pat Spencer was part of our locker room, right? And we were going to quarterfinal games, and, going back to a quarterfinal game without Pat, was something that, Evan James was a big part of. Joey Kamish was a big part of, right? And so those guys have kind of been helping me to lead that conversation of, what is the Loyola standard? And our standard is that we're going to play the toughest possible schedule that we can play on the front end in hopes that it prepares us for the league. But the league is the way to the tournament. And we have to get back to, competing at a really high level in our league. So, that's the first way into the tournament, is to win your league for sure.
When you kind of look at the COVID era, which, this is kind of the last year where a lot of schools have kind of larger rosters, larger senior classes and whatnot. What are kind of your takeaways as to, what the challenges have ultimately been in terms of navigating it from a roster construction and a program perspective?
The first thing I would say is when I look at the COVID era, I couldn't be more proud that we haven't lost kids to other programs, right? Like our kids have that extra year of eligibility. I think it says a lot, that we have 8 graduate students that have stayed at Loyola, have the ability to go a lot of places. And it just means to me that our culture is strong, right? So that's number one. But I would say number two, the managing a larger, roster is just something that every program has had to do, because I can't look at the kids that were part of those programs that, the part of that year that lost and said, and just say, hey, we're ready to move on. So, I feel very compelled that, being the last year, to do the right thing by anybody that's in our locker room. And what the biggest challenge for me is that I'd love to see some of our seniors be captains and be outspoken in the locker room. And I think that that part of it has been missed a little bit, but I think like every team, you have a depth chart, you have a roster, and the best guys play, and so I don't care if it's a Matt Minikis who starts as a freshman in a 5-class locker room, or if it's, a graduate student who's getting his first minutes, and we've had both. I think that the guys recognize they want to win, and they put the team first. And, we're still at 52. I mean, if we have 50 lockers, we're 2 over. So it might mean smaller classes, but this year, between our fifth years and our graduates, we're going to have a lot of young men that are leaving our locker room this year, and there are going to be a lot of new opportunities next year. But that's what we're going to deal with next year, right? So the classes, have been a little bit bigger for the future, but and plenty of opportunities will be out there in the future. But I'm going to enjoy our 8 graduate students plus our senior class this year.
All right, before we let you go, of course, the big change in the sport this year, the introduction of replay. Have you guys worked on what that's going to look like for you? I don't know if it's something that in the regular season is going to impact you as much. I assume you're not going to like turn up and look at me up in the booth and say, "Hey, man, I don't think that's the way it's going to go, right?"
I could, everything's on the table right now, Glenn. You just kind of hang out that window, give me a thumbs up or down.
Right. Let you know.
Yeah, no, the one thing that you probably do is you never like to show an opponent's goals, on your scoreboard, and maybe you have to start showing your opponent's goals to give yourself a quick look at it. At some point, do we get to a point where, we've got a former coach that's kind of a volunteer that's up there seeing it from a bird's eye view and, texting you like it's coming. Right. And, but I think the biggest challenge for all of us as coaches is what's reviewable, what's not reviewable in that heat of the battle. We've tried to do it with Score Break, but quite honestly, we've got to wait till we've got ESPN games at home with different multiple camera angles that it's really going to be baptism by fire. Right. And every program and every coach is going to have their own philosophy of how they want to do that, whether or not you're willing to burn a timeout for something that's a question mark. Right. So, my personal feeling is I wish it was only in the playoffs, but we're dealing with it right now, and we'll see what it looks like.
All right, I don't know what the rules are, so I don't even know if I'm allowed to give you the thumbs up, thumbs down. But we'll work on that. You and I, we'll figure that out as the season goes on. Season gets underway Saturday, 1:00 against Georgetown. Huge game, obviously, to start the season as always for Loyola. Coach Charley Toomey, always appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time for us, and we'll see you out there. All right.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
Charley Toomey, head coach at Loyola. Today's show brought to you by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today. Thumbnail for you on Loyola, and then we'll kind of preview the rest of the show.
I think after the last couple of years, and even going back to 21, remember that was a team
had to put a late rally together.
Had to put a late rally together. This has not been the smoothest stretch for Loyola, and I feel like there's probably a little bit, and I'm guilty of this for sure, in those last few years where there was a little bit of benefit of the doubt given to Loyola, and I don't know. I think they might have exhausted that a little bit. And that just makes this the perfect time for Loyola to go out and have a good season, right? Like
nobody expects
where it's not quite as expected. There's obviously opportunities, as we've talked about, for them to go get high-end wins. You look at that non-conference schedule, but they're going to score. Like they have the pieces to be able to score. The question is, how quickly does the defense come together in front of Luke Stout, and can they win enough faceoffs? You look at the league that they're in the Patriot League. I feel like Army is in really good shape. They only lost, I think, 6 guys to graduation last year, and some of those guys didn't play particularly huge roles on the field. BU has a lot of fifth-year guys. But, we saw Loyola win at BU at the end of last year. And this is a Loyola team that's a little bit older in some places as well. So I think, I know when I was helping to stitch together the Lacrosse magazine rankings, I had them just on the outside of the top 20. And if you were to tell me right now that Loyola ends up like in the 10 to 12 range, would not be surprised, because I think the pieces are there for that to happen, especially if the close defense is able to mature quickly, which it very well may.
All right. We are going to be chatting, as I mentioned at the top of the show, with all of the D1 men's coaches in the state of Maryland. Just quick hitters on storylines for everybody. It's that throughout the course of the morning.
All right. Well, we've already talked about Loyola. Obviously, I think Hopkins, they're the hunted now a little bit. There's no. Everybody expects them to be good again. And they had a little bit of a stretch there where that wasn't the case. So I think that's the case for them. Mount St. Mary's, a team that has a new coach for the first time in almost 30 years. And so what does Chris Ryan, coming in from Mercyhurst, where he won a D2 title, had the Lakers in the D2 final last year, what does that mean overall? I think it's more of a big picture type of season for Mount St. Mary's, more so than, what's their record this particular year. You look at Navy, last year I felt like was a little bit of a prove-it year for them, and for a variety of reasons, injuries, what have you, maybe didn't prove as much. They've got something to prove. You know who else has something to prove? Dave Cottle, who's in as the interim, as the offensive coordinator for the season. I don't think he's there just to twiddle his thumbs or whatever. I think Dave back in the
doesn't need to do this.
He doesn't. He does not need to do this. So, and I had a good conversation with Dave last week. He's still the same as ever. So, I think that for him, this is an opportunity to be able to, and he knows Joe Amplo very well from their time. Basically, Dave was a consultant on Marquette's coaching search when they started the program, and they settled on Joe Amplo. So Towson, I think that's a team that when you look at it, a lot of questions at the defensive end. They're a little older on the offensive end, need a new goalie, set at the face-off. Is that a team that can get itself back? Maybe they're not going to be Delaware, or beat Delaware for that matter, but can they be like the second best team in the CAA and give themselves a chance? I think that's plausible. Maryland, a team that last year, did not catch all the breaks. It certainly wasn't a juggernaut like it was the year before, had a bunch of injuries. How do they look on the offensive end? And they have a new offensive coordinator, Mike Phipps, stepping in for Jake Bernhardt. And then UMBC, plenty of questions there. A team that missed the America East Tournament, as I recall, last year. And so, how do they get back into the mix, contending for an NCAA Tournament berth and a conference title?
So that's what's coming up throughout the course of the morning as we continue to talk. And I mentioned, obviously, with Coach that also today we'll probably cover with everybody a couple things. Patrick, mentioned the fact that we're finally kind of coming out on the other side of the COVID year and the impact that had and the extra years the players had. And then on top of that, this is the first year for replay. This is the first year that there will be, and I know that the push was to have it for the NCAA tournament, and Charley Toomey brought that up, but it will be available for every game where there is a broadcast for coaches to use the challenge system. I think it's one per half, correct?
I think that's right.
So it'll be interesting to see what impact. We've had some high-profile situations where there are some questionable calls in NCAA tournament games. Was something a goal? Was it not a goal? I think that's the biggest reason why we're at this point. I think it's a simple thing to say, hey, let's try to make sure we get the calls right.
If you have it available to you, why not use it?
Yep.
At the same time, I completely understand the argument of if all you've got is one camera angle and it's 5 stories up or whatever, is it going to be – you're in a situation there where you're simply going to only be in a position to overturn the most egregious things because there's only so much you're going to be able to pick up from an angle like that.
Let's continue on here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Next on the hot seat, he is the head coach at Johns Hopkins. He's Coach Peter Milliman, and he's back with us now here on the program. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick Stevens. It's always great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes for us this morning.
For sure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Coach, obviously I know a year ago, very exciting for everybody at Johns Hopkins, and while it wasn't a national championship, was this always building? Like when we look back and sort of dissect, if I said, hey, how did that happen a year ago? Would you say that was, it just takes a couple of years in order to get the foundation of the program that you want? Or were there specific moments, specific, players' arrival, something like that you look back on and say, hey, this was really foundational in how we were able to get things turned around?
I guess in reference to last year, I think there was some significant contributions from a senior class that I thought it was pretty special. I think there was a lot of guys, that maybe saw things coming or things starting to line up. But at the end of the day, it was part of the process, is part of the build, and the guys that were coaching here this year are excited to get this thing started with the 2024 Jays, and I think they're all feeling pretty excited about that.
Peter, I know one of the big additions for you guys, Chase Erlin from Cornell in the cage. I know you had a pre-existing relationship with him, recruiting him to Cornell. What's the excitement level adding him, and how quickly upon knowing that he was going to look to play an extra year, were you in contact with him about potentially becoming a Blue Jay?
I called him as soon as he went in the portal, and we just started having a conversation about this as an opportunity. We have an education program here. He is interested in being an educator and a coach and a teacher, and he's just been always on that path since the day I met him. And so this just seemed to be a good opportunity for him in his career path, and he had another year of eligibility, and obviously getting a chance to reconnect and bringing him here has been exciting addition. So we're looking forward to compete together.
What makes him so special as a player, Coach?
He's competitive. He's a phenomenal teammate. I think the guys really enjoy being around him, working with him. He's obsessive about the work. He just loves it. He loves being out there. He's an energy guy, so he's always bringing that. You can hear him. If you turn your mics up, you can probably hear him. Your headphones. So he's around here somewhere talking. So he's just one of those guys that he's an enjoyable guy to have on a team, and he works his butt off, and so he's endears himself to his teammates pretty well.
Coach Peter Milliman from Johns Hopkins is with us here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, you mentioned some of the seniors last year. You guys bring back a lot of that offense, and I know that some of that every team is different, every year is different. But is there a bit of a, hey, we have confidence that we're going to be capable in scoring goals because of some of the guys that are back this year, the Dagnons, the Melendezes, those players that you just have an uber confidence in what you're going to be capable of doing offensively?
I think there's definitely a belief in that. Confidence comes from a certainty, and we haven't done anything yet this year. So I don't think that anybody's getting overconfident about anything that we're doing. We're just we're excited to get to work together. I mean, having some pieces back for consistency and some experience plays a big part, but we got to score one goal against Denver before we score anything else. So I think just staying focused on one thing at a time, what's right in front of us, and keeping the guys hungry for another one after one falls.
Peter, the defense obviously also emerged as a strength last season, and a couple guys that are back there include Scott Smith on close, Brett Martin at short stick. Those two guys in particular, but the unit in general, what do you feel like those guys' greatest strengths are for you?
I mean, similar to what I mentioned about Chase, I mean, they're just ultra competitive guys. They work their butts off. Coach K is as thorough as they get when it comes to a defensive coordinator. He's going to have those guys dialed in with the right stuff. He's going to have everything prepped the right way, and give the guys an opportunity to just go after it and compete and play. And I think that's where they want to be. Trying not to get them too bogged down in system stuff and allow them to just be athletes. It's a great group. We're excited to be working with them. I think there's, again, similar to the offensive end, there's some known pieces there that we've worked with for a while, but as of right now, we haven't done anything yet. So we're just excited to get started.
You mentioned obviously the season gets underway Saturday at noon against Denver there at Homewood Field. Coach, you guys brought in what was lauded as one of the top recruiting classes in the country. Can you give us an idea of, among the young guys, who stood out that you feel like is going to have an opportunity to get some minutes early?
There's a few guys probably in the mix. I don't know how many of them are definite yet. Young defenseman Quentin Kilrain's been really good. Hunter Chevette and Jim Ayers have been in the mix so far. I think there's a few others that are close. Luke Martin's in the mix as a backup pole. So I think there's a few others that may continue to work their way in, but we've got a lot of returners, a lot of upperclassmen, so it's not an easy lineup to crack. So I'm not sure any of those freshmen are going to start a game, but
Right.
I think those ones have proven that they have the ability to be in that conversation.
The schedule this year, obviously, a lot of those rivalry games. I think about the Carolina and Virginia games that you had to play midweek because of the ACC scheduling issues now on the weekend. How beneficial do you think that's going to be for you guys, basically being into a more routine one game a week, especially those sorts of games on the weekend rather than on short prep when you get to them, obviously?
I mean, they probably will help you in those games. Sometimes I think those shorter weeks or the doubled up weekends can help you in the long run. So I think there's a benefit to all sides of it. But I mean, we're looking forward to playing those rivalries. Wherever they are. Last year we had to put them on weekdays, and I wasn't afraid of it or worried about it. It didn't go our way in some of those instances, but you're going to play those top teams wherever you can, whenever you need to. So, I think a week of prep may help us, but who knows? I mean, we got to get there first. So, if we're not playing well, it may not help us. So.
Oh, I get it, and I certainly get the value too of you got to play the Big Ten tournament, the the NCAA championship weekend, and quick turnarounds, and so I certainly see where there could be an advantage on the other side. With that in mind, Coach, the difference between being a good team and a team that had a nice season and then taking that next step and getting back to championship weekend and trying to win a title. Do you have a sense for what would be needed? What's the difference in being good and being championship level good?
I think there's a few pieces in that equation. I'm not going to be foolish enough to think that I know all of what they are. I just want to make sure that we're getting the best out of our guys every day in practice, and we're continuing to build. I think if we're going to be an elite team and be somebody that can compete for championships, we're going to have to be competitive in every facet of the game. And I don't think you get to that point by riding one or two, strengths or one or two players. We need to be a possession-oriented team. We need to be disciplined in our execution. We need to be, tough on defense. We need to fight like crazy for loose balls. There needs to be a belief and a confidence in the guys in what we're doing. But really, I just think there needs to be a hunger to get better in everything we're doing and never be satisfied with where we are. And if we start with that, I think, the formula can sort itself out with how our attributes, come into form.
Patrick and I were talking just before you came on about the fact that the new rule this year and finally having replay and coaches' challenges, presumably a bit of advantage for a program like Johns Hopkins, considering you've got all the ESPN broadcasts and probably a little bit better angles. Have you gotten a sense for what that might look like, how you decide in certain situations, what's worth it, what's not worth it? I don't know if you guys even used it. Did you use it for the scrimmages so far?
No, and I'm not entirely sure yet how much it'll even be used this year. I mean,
Okay.
it's just kind of come on so late. The Big Ten has decided not to do it, so it's more of a team by team basis. So we need to go into each game figuring out who's planning on doing it at their home field, whether we're going to or not. And so those are just things that are not fully answered yet, as odd as that is.
The good news, we got plenty of time before the
through.
games start,
Yeah.
right? Like, no problem.
Yeah, plenty of time. I can tell you right now, if I look at my schedule, I don't know who is going to have replay on their stadium or not. So,
okay.
It'll probably be more of a week by week thing.
Obviously, will be helpful though by the time you get to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, we get some practice at it before we get there for sure.
Yeah.
But having the Big Ten decide not to do it is kind of an impact in when it comes to that. So I think I would be surprised if every other team is going to do it, because there's just such a big cost component to it, and then there's the consistency of it. If you're going to do it 3 times throughout the year, is it worth it for those as much as the rest of them? I think it would be for us to get the experience of it, but if you're only going to do it for a couple of games, you want to make sure that you're building for knowns that you can work around all year long.
Completely understand. All right, Saturday, everything gets underway out at Homewood Field. And then as Patrick brought up, there is a midweek game next week against Towson, 4 o'clock on Tuesday as well. So a couple of great opportunities to see the Blue Jays early on at home. Coach Peter Milliman, really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing your team throughout the course of the season. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's Coach Peter Milliman from Johns Hopkins. I didn't know that the Big Ten wasn't using it.
I didn't either, actually. So
that's quite fascinating, right?
Well, if the Big Ten's not using it,
Yeah.
then that basically only leaves one league that's likely to use it, right?
The
Like,
ACC, yeah.
and that's, they'll obviously have pretty much all their games on TV. But if they don't use it, then you're
what was the point?
What was the point?
What was the point? I'm going to continue to ask the coaches about it.
I am surprised that the Big Ten would do that, only to the extent that you have 3 of the programs, right. Hopkins, Maryland, and Rutgers, playing in football stadiums. And so for certainly Rutgers and Maryland, the equipment is almost certainly already there to begin with. So maybe that's something that there was a reluctance to force everybody to invest with a smaller stadium. And that's no knock on anybody else. But I think in some ways, if that's the case, then you're essentially getting what you wanted out of the rule to begin with, which is you just want to have it in the postseason. Like you don't want a tournament game being decided or decided by a bad call, like a blatantly bad call.
But it also seems like it sets up for there might be an occasion this season where somebody's asked, "Hey, why didn't you challenge that?" And a coach says,
I couldn't,
or I didn't think we were, or something. I thought for this game we were.
That would be even worse,
well,
right?
Maybe they wouldn't say that.
I suspect that everybody's going to be aware,
going into
each game. So whether they could or not, that would surprise me, especially given how detail oriented coaches tend to be.
That's fair.
But at the same time, that tells me that we're probably a few years away, and frankly, a lot of technological stuff gets cheaper as time goes on. So we're probably.
Well, and I think it was interesting you pointed out the timing of it. That like maybe if they had, hey, we're going to implement this, but for next year, that buys everyone the time to say, hey, we all need to get compliant about this. Yeah. Everybody's got to get on board.
And this isn't as simple as a shot clock. Like
a
shot clock is essentially you install an extra clock.
And you need to have somebody to
operate it.
Right.
But it's not
it
is not a particularly complex thing.
Yes.
It's not super expensive. It's not cheap, but it's not super expensive equipment or anything like that. And it's the sort of equipment that you figure a shot clock is a shot clock. Like you're going to keep the shot clock for the foreseeable future,
Correct.
Right? If you have it as separate from your scoreboard. This is stuff you're probably going to buy and might have to update again in another 5 to 10 years as technology advances and the visual displays improve and what have you.
I do think it also it sets up for the more awkward, like there's an obvious call. We implemented a replay rule and we can't use it
because there's no replay.
We can't fix the problem because we decided we weren't doing it. Like it feels like there might be some controversy along those lines.
Well,
that comes up during the course of the year.
The good thing is it's like any other sport, right? Like more people are paying attention during the postseason.
That's true.
And so the people that are watching during the regular season of just about any sport that isn't professional football, right, are probably more granular, more into the weeds of a situation. And then in the postseason, you get people that, frankly, don't pay attention to it that much. They're like, why can't you do this? And it's like basic questions, right? Yep. Same thing here. And so I think one of the things you get here is you just have to kind of, at least pacify that so you don't get screamed at when a championship is on the line.
Right. Hey, Goose Flight's Lager is available, and another location where you can find Goose Flight's Lager cans as the Green Turtle in Canton now has cans available. Cans also available at your neighborhood Glory Days Grill. Cans and 6-packs available at Costas Inn in Dundalk, Guilford Hall Brewery in Station North, and also 6-packs and cases available at the Wine Source in Hamden. We are adding to the list If you've forgotten any of those already, you can go to pressboxonline.com/gooseflights. It's great beer, but more importantly, $1.98 from every can sold goes to the Goose Flights Foundation, which is providing non-emergency medical transport to those in need, continuing the legacy of Tony Siragusa. So again, find out more, pressboxonline.com/gooseflights, and enjoy a Goose Flights this week. When we come back in, the first-year head coach at Mount St. Mary's, the only new coach that we're going to chat with all morning, Chris Ryan, will join us. Then we'll chat with Shawn Nadelen from Towson. That's on the way. College Lacrosse Preview Show with Patrick Stevens here on Glenn Clark Radio. Why bet with the big boys this football season? Instead, try your hand with the local book, Superbook Sports, this fall. Superbook Sports is the book next door. Just a dedicated team of the best odds makers in Las Vegas, making sure you get the best prices and parlays anywhere. And now, Superbook will give you a bonus of up to $250 when you sign up and wager on the same day and use the promo code GlennClark23, GLENNCLARK23. So bet with the best and use the promo code GlennClark23 this football season with Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
There's so much focus on sports betting these days, but I want to talk about an area that nobody wants to gamble on, where you choose to go out and spend your hard-earned dollars to eat. The Costas Inn is no gamble at all. The quality on their menu is outstanding, and the value is off the charts with a great and varied list of specials Monday through Friday. And the staples of the menu, whether it's salads, burgers, fish, they're all fantastic. And I haven't even mentioned the crabs or crab cakes yet. So check out the menu for yourself at CostasInn.com. When choosing a place to dine, never gamble on the food you put in your belly. The Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard, or call 410-477-1975 for reservations and your steamed crab orders.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis, ajmichaels.com.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The latest edition of Pressbox is available now, and it's our very special annual Best Of issue. On the cover, we celebrate Orioles manager Brandon Hyde as our Mo Gabba Sports Person of the Year, and the Orioles as our Team of the Year, with Stan the Fan Charles and Glenn Clark sitting down with Hyde to discuss his role in creating the culture that defined the Orioles' magic season. Also inside, we recognize the top people, performances, and moments of 2023. Pressbox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the Ravens, Terps, and O's at PressBoxOnline.com.
Hey Ravens fans, looking for the perfect new game day brew? Get a Guilford, Baltimore's finest craft beer during the next home game at the Bank. That's not all. Gather your flock next home game and check out Guilford Hall Brewery's brand new bar, the Gilly Nest, located near Section 505. No tickets? No problem. Enjoy all Ravens games all season long at our restaurant and brewery in Station North. Guilford Hall Brewery, European tradition, Baltimore charm. Back in here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show, Glenn Clark Radio. Patrick Stevens in studio with us this morning as we continue to chat with all the Division I men's lacrosse coaches throughout the course of the state. And Patrick, only one that is a first-year head coach. And this is my first opportunity to catch up with him as the new head coach out in Emmitsburg at the Mount. Is Coach Chris Ryan, who is with us this morning here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick Stevens. It's great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
My pleasure, guys. Always good to get on here and talk about the Mount and Mount Lacrosse.
Well, Coach, I have not had the opportunity to chat with you since you took the job. I think the thing that jumped out at me is it seems obvious your relationship with your athletic director, Brad Davis, that goes back to your time together. Were there other things that said to you, like, the Mount is the place? It seems so obvious, like, to reconnect with somebody, but were there some other things that you said, hey, also this mattered to me significantly as well?
Yeah, I think there was a number of different factors that played into our, mine and my family's decision-making process with making the move down to the Mount after 23 years, up in Erie at Mercyhurst. So, I think Brad absolutely played a large part in giving me the confidence to come down. One of the things I love though is, I worked at a small Catholic university for 2 decades. So I was pretty comfortable with the surroundings. I was comfortable too that when I looked at the situation and made an assessment of the program, I just felt that there was a really high ceiling. Like I thought that there was a lot of room for growth at the Mount. Once I got on campus, I learned that the locker room was full of really good student athletes. So that gave me a lot of confidence also. But just sort of this overwhelming feeling that we could push this thing a little bit further here. I said as a coach, I've been really fortunate to have been able to experience success, on the field in my profession. And I wanted to go somewhere where I felt I could be competitive and that the team was going to be competitive. And I thought it was a great conference to be in. I thought that like I said, that there was a really high ceiling and there was just a lot that we could accomplish here.
Chris, it's Patrick Stevens. To build off of the thought of the really high ceiling, what do you see as the potential at the Mount? Like you said, in a league that I think it's fair to say that the Mount has had success in the past, back in the Metro Atlantic, but also geographically situated in a spot where you're pretty close to a lot of talent as well.
Yeah, it's where my vision for the program is pretty simple, because I don't think I'm an overcomplicated person, although my wife would probably disagree with that assessment. But when taking a look at the program, and you mentioned, Patrick, you mentioned a couple of the different factors. I see us being able to grow this thing into a top 30, 25 program, to be able to compete on a yearly basis in the MAAC for the MAAC championship. I would love to say we would like to win it every year. I don't know if it's going to work out that way. But to be ultra competitive within the conference and to sort of get the Mount, into more of the forefront, especially in the area. One of the things that Brad said to me when the hire was made was, this is a Division I men's lacrosse program in the state of Maryland, and it needs to be important. So the school has made a push into the program. Brad being a huge supporter of lacrosse, immediately, again, I think he also saw the ceiling and the potential, and the school has made a significant investment in a program. We look forward to, like I said, pushing this thing forward.
Coach, before we get into your roster this season, what to expect from your team, I got to be honest, as I look at you, I'm a little bit disappointed that you're not wearing the shirt and tie as we do this conversation. Can you tell me the history?
I thought you just had some overblown thing that I might be better looking than I actually am, to tell you the truth. Maybe it's just stunning getting on this.
So can you give me the story? But first of all, is it going to continue right at the Mount? And what's the story behind the shirt and the tie on the sidelines?
Yeah, it's going to continue. It's part of who I am. The tie was given to me by my parents years ago, and it was with me for almost all my time at Mercyhurst. So the tie, we'll have to see if I'm gonna go at the same tie. But the tie was supposedly blessed by a bishop, and we won a lot of games at Mercyhurst with it. So if it ain't
makes
broke,
sense,
don't
100%. Oh, I couldn't.
Yeah,
agree more.
we with getting this thing up and running and being at the Mount, we need that help on our side. So we'll see how it goes. It started off as to tell you the truth, I'm a Michigan fan, but I always liked Jim Tressel's sweater vest at Ohio State. Okay. So at first there was a sweater vest, and then I just couldn't stick with it because it was Coach Tressel's idea. So then it got stripped down to just the tie. But yeah, it's I think I put on a little weight while recruiting here and working here, so I got to get out and get a new white shirt this year. But Brad asked 2 days ago, I was on the phone with Brad, and Brad goes, "Sticking with the shirt and tie?" And I said, "Yeah, Brad, I'm sticking with the shirt and tie." He goes, awesome. "Oh, good." So yes, Saturday at Navy, I'll have the shirt and tie.
How have your typical days gone since arriving at the Mount back in the summer?
I don't know, Pat, because I don't know when one started and one's ended, to tell you the truth. It's been one big blur. People ask me how it's going. I said, I'm working late and putting on weight. That's how it's going right now. So, I mean, typically with Coach Dugan and Coach O'Hagan and Coach Murphy, it has been a lot of hours. There's a lot of different, we'll say, facets of the program right now that are under development. And we are working pretty hard. It's been a lot of hours. My family, Karen and the kids, are actually still up in Erie for the year, as my oldest is a senior in high school. And I've made the comment, like, I really think that's probably best at this point, because all the hours that we're sinking into the program as a whole. So it's been, I'm running on fumes this morning. I got home about 11:30 last night, and you just sort of roll out of bed and it's Groundhog's Day and it starts all over again. You get in there and you just keep working. So that's, we knew coming in that there was going to, a lot of time and sweat equity was going to be required here. And, as a staff, we're definitely working hard.
He is Coach Chris Ryan from Mount St. Mary's. They open up the year Saturday at noon at Navy. Coach, it's a different era, right, in college sports, and so when you get a job like this, I don't know how much you felt the need to re-recruit some of your guys, but it wasn't. I don't think it was a cupboard bare situation. It was a pretty good team a year ago. What did you make of the roster? I think the guy that stands out to a lot of people, Mitchell Dunham, who you bring back defensively, and how important was it for you to make sure that you sort of had that stalwart on the defensive side?
Yeah, you know what, we have lost quite a bit on the offensive side of the ball, and there's going to be some development that's going to be going on there. So you're going to have to lean on your experience. And right now, with Mitch and Jackson Phillips and Ben Ward, back there, that gives you three pretty experienced guys to lean on. I think very much so when you look at the roster, not that it makes it any different than any other situation at any other school, but I think particularly this year with some of the changes that are going on in the growth, you're going to lean on your older guys to get the job done. And, especially offensively, you have some guys coming back, but we have some older guys who are newer, guys that maybe haven't logged a whole lot of time on the field during games. And again, they're going to find themselves in a leadership responsibility, position pretty early here. So there's I say this is a process with these guys. I love the roster. Team GPA was a 3.5. They're doing a lot of great things here, and I hope it translates into success on the field. But it definitely helps sort of having the spine of the team in the defensive end, and we're gonna be counting on those guys early on with some of the great competition we're going to run into, on the front part of the schedule.
Chris, you've worked with the Water Dogs in the PLL the last few years. How much has that sort of improved you as a coach and maybe changed or altered or adjusted kind of things you approach during the college season?
Yeah, interesting question. Because coaching with the Water Dogs is much different than coaching at the collegiate level. At the collegiate level, you're looked at a lot of times, they have all the answers. Mm-hmm. With the Water Dogs, it's just sort of giving a suggestion and letting those guys run with it. I mean, I remember once at a timeout telling the guys, I'm like, listen, you got some of the best defensive players in the world in this huddle. Just go play lacrosse with it. But I can tell you, I think one of the things that it's really helped me with is sort of relationship building with my players, because at that level, you are building relationship with those guys. It's very much on that, not to use the word level again, but on that level with the Water Dog defense, because those guys are very well versed and very talented and super athletic. So it's more or less getting to know them. And like I said, having a relationship with them where you're making suggestions and really letting them make the final decision on what they want to do. It's hard to tell Dylan Ward what you're going to do in front of him. Dylan's going to tell you what he wants done in front of him with it. So when it comes to, at the collegiate level, I think it has sort of loosened me up a little bit with the guys. I think over the last couple of years, I don't know if it's just becoming older and a little more experienced, but I have felt myself sort of calm down a little bit with it. Plus, I mean, if I kept the pace up I was at, I don't think I was going to live very long, to tell you the truth. So just being able to be comfortable with your surroundings, have confidence in the kids that you're putting out on the field and letting them make plays. And again, developing those relationships on and off the field that are going to make for a good culture.
And then what about just the difference in the jump from the D2 level to D? Like, is it still the same job? Like, do you still say I'm a lacrosse coach, right? Or is it dramatically different making that type of jump?
No, you know what? I'll equate it to being at the first Water Dogs camp, and we scrimmaged the Redwoods, and Miles Jones came running down the sideline directly at me. And I was like, wow, this is a lot different than Division II.
Yeah.
And, and going back to the last question, I mean, very much going and working with the Water Dogs. I had told Brad at the time when we were at Mercier that it was going to be the greatest internship that I've ever had. And there was an adjustment period. Again, you're adjusting to the type of coaching that you're gonna have to do. You're adjusting to obviously a different level, different players, different attitudes. Making a jump from Mercier's to the Mount, I think that it is in a lot of ways very much the same job. Lacrosse is lacrosse, and maybe it's a little bit obviously closer or a smaller adjustment to Division I to Division II than it was from Division II up to the PLL. But obviously things move faster, bigger athletes, faster athletes. I think you get bigger staffs, more experienced staffs. So there's going to be obviously an adjustment period with that too. But when it comes down to it, lacrosse is lacrosse, and you have to go coach it, and you have to go coach your kids.
And that starts on Saturday in Annapolis at noon against Navy, where they certainly have some dudes. Like, there are certainly some big boys down there. There's no doubt about it.
They do. They do
ahead.
present certain challenges.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
No question. Hey, Coach, great to meet you. Looking forward to seeing your team and chatting with you moving forward as you settle in out in Emmitsburg. Thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us this morning. Looking forward to doing it again.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Go Mount.
Coach Chris Ryan, first-year head coach at Mount St. Mary's, a thumbnail on the Mountaineers.
Well, first of all, it sounds like he needs to meet the Archbishop of Baltimore.
Right, get a new tie.
Get a new
Yeah,
tie,
100%.
right?
Something blessed, right?
So beyond that, you would think the Archbishop would do that for somebody working at a Catholic
You would think,
institution,
right?
Anyway, I think that that's a multi-year process to get them to where he wants to get them. It's interesting to hear him talk about, the Mount as a top 30 or top 25 program. I don't think anybody's really thought of them being able to have those frankly, those aspirations. They've occasionally picked off a team here and there, and for years and years it felt like Georgetown or Maryland or somebody was always going up there to play. And their schedule got a little tighter because of conference expansion and what have you. But, I think that defensively they could be a pretty good team. There's certainly some things to work with at the offensive end, but also to work on at the offensive end. But, this is not with where Mount St. Mary's is at right now. This is not about this season. This is about a foundational type of thing and putting yourselves in a position to be able to become a team that is routinely in the mix for the NCAA tournament. I think the Mounts made 2 NCAA tournaments in 2002 and 2010, I think it is, or 2003 and 2010, something like that.
I thought there was one more recent. Why did I think there was one more recent?
Maybe there was. I did a quick scan through the record book recently. But
I'm certainly not going to challenge your knowledge.
Well,
I just want to make that abundantly
it's
clear.
funny. When I went through it, I thought I was missing one too.
No, you're right. It's 2010.
So anyway, it's been a while, and that was that's a game that nobody remembers because it was at Virginia, in the wake of a tragedy down there.
That's
so. That game was just sort of happened to be, window dressing in a lot of ways to everything else that was going on down there. So it's been a while for the Mount, being a relevant figure nationally for sure, and even as a regular conference tournament participant. They've been kind of in and out of that mix. I think they hosted a conference tournament maybe in 18 or 19 or something like that. But they are there are advantages for them, particularly in the Metro Atlantic. And I think that, Chris Ryan is a guy that's won, 267 games in 23 years. The guy knows what he's doing.
Yep.
And so there is a championship pedigree there for him. And I think it's an interesting challenge for him to take on because, quite frankly, he could have kept winning games at Mercyhurst for years and years and years and years and years. So I'm certainly curious to see what he's able to do. You don't see a ton of those D2 and D3 guys get the chance to jump up. I mean, you think about Mike Daly at Brown as one of the more recent guys that's been able to do that. But usually it's a guy like a Morgan at Merrimack that comes up with as they make the jump. But you don't see it. Mike Pressler was a D3 coach at Ohio Wesleyan before going to Duke. But it's easy to pick those things out. It's a little harder, to really see like a string of them or anything like that. So Mike Murphy at Penn was at Haverford's another one as an example. So in any case, certainly interested to see what the Mount is able to do over the long haul. That's not one where you're going to judge this is a success based on year one, unless it's just a wild success and they're in the tournament or what have you. But I think Chris Ryan's certainly somebody that knows what he's doing and a really good hire for the Mount.
All right, real quick before we chat with Shawn Nadelen, I didn't have you give a thumbnail on Johns Hopkins. Can we do the 1 minute version of that? 1 minute version
of Johns Hopkins. Not much different than what we were saying earlier. I mean, that's a team that people will be gunning for again.
Yep.
I don't think, and not that people were looking past Hopkins because the Hopkins name meant so much. I mean, you think about in the pandemic season how excited Michigan was to win at Homewood that year, even though that was not a very good Hopkins team. Like that was still a big deal. So, when Hopkins is down, it's not like they benefit from the fact that people really sort of look past them or anything. But last year sort of reestablished them as a capable top 10 type of team. And I think one of the things that Peter Milliman said last year that really resonated with me is they wanted to have the best role players in the country. And what he meant wasn't just to have a bunch of niche guys, but to have guys that did their job really, really well. Can that continue? They have a lot of dudes. I think the number was their top 11 scorers are back this season. And then the question there too is how good is Chase Erlin and how well does the rest of the defense fill in around him? I think that's going to be a strength. I think Scott Smith is a fabulous defenseman, and Brett Martin's one of the best short sticks in the country. Even if Peter didn't exactly describe either of them terribly extensively, I'll do it for him. Those guys are really good.
All right. Hour number 1 of the show in the books was brought to you by Superbook. Use the code GlennClark23. When you sign up at Superbook, you'll receive up to $250 in a same-day first bet match, win or lose. Had to do this a little bit earlier on because of their practice schedule, but we had a guest stop by the studio today. Shawn Nadelen is up next here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. We continue on the Lacrosse Preview Show today. Glenn Clark Radio, Patrick Stevens here, and joining us now here in studio is the head coach of the Towson Tigers. They open up the season Tuesday afternoon at Johns Hopkins. He is Coach Shawn Nadelen. Good to see you, Coach. Thanks for coming in and hanging out with us.
Absolutely. My pleasure. It means lacrosse season's here.
No doubt about it. I know that last year you got off to a tough start, clearly. But there was a lot of good after that point, right? Like, can you kind of walk me through what happened, what turned, and how you guys might be able to build off of the second half of the season as you go into this year?
Sure. Yeah. We have a tough schedule, from start to finish, and we had some growing pains, and which is part of a season. Sometimes you got a veteran group and things are clicking right from the start. That really wasn't us last year. By the end of the season, we started 3 freshmen, on our offensive end. So there was some learning curve there. We had guys, our first midfield, truth be told, through our non-conference schedule, kind of struggled for production. We were relying on kind of our second midfield, and at that time we're like, well, our seconds are first, our first are seconds. And we had some ebbs and flows on the defensive end. We had some strong outings, and then we had some tough outings where we just didn't get consistent play. So again, it's that's the beauty of being able to play a season, continuing to come to work every day and practice and understand what we need to do to get better and recognize our our strengths and recognize areas of improvement. And things started to fall together in conference play, and our guys kind of figured out who we were, what helps us be successful, and guys started making plays more consistently.
You mentioned the defensive end maybe being up and down a little bit, but it seemed like that group kind of evened itself out on a more consistent basis throughout. And I know Colby Bars made a fantastic adjustment from pole to close defense. How did that group, you feel like, develop, and how strong do you think that's going to be for you this spring?
We were a more veteran defensive group last year, returning starters with Garrett Zingale, Colby, still going from pole to close, Reagan McNamara, Evan Long was new in cage, and we were bouncing back and forth with him at times and putting in a backup. And then defensive midfield, we had some consistency with Brandon Hunt and Jordan Hayes and Reese Potter, guys like that. So there was definitely some more familiarity, and that allowed us to have some consistency on the defensive end. We lost quite a few of those guys, coming into this year. 2 starters at close defense graduate, 2 D middies graduate, goalie graduate. So that's kind of where we are right now, is continuing to evaluate. Colby's still a mainstay for us on the close defensive end. Sam Moran at the long stick midi. Sam had a really strong year last year, continuing to play well up there. But beyond that, there's a lot of inexperience. We got guys, but again, it's getting them experience, getting them, understanding what it really takes to be successful possession by possession and working together.
Let's dive into one of those positions that looks really inexperienced at the college level anyway, and that's in the goal. I know Luke Downs started the game for you last year, but that seems like a situation where there's probably going to be some patience required, maybe even some flux even right now as you're a week or so from your opener.
Yeah, going into kind of preseason and as that started to unfold heading into our scrimmages, there were really 3 guys in the goalie position that emerged as kind of the top guys that we wanted to continue to take a strong look at, because they earned earned opportunities. And Luke's one of those guys. With his experience, I feel like he's done a good job being a leader within our goalie group and playing pretty well. Matt Nyland and Kaufman has been doing a great job as well. So those guys are all battling and doing a great job trying to solidify that position. Sometimes it's tough when you have guys competing and you're not really, one's not really taking the reins. So people say sometimes if you got 3 goalies, you really don't have any goalies. So, but I think we got 3 good ones, and it gives us options if we go with one guy and he's doing really well. We know we got a good one, and if not, then we might have to go to another guy that's got some proven opportunity.
Coach Shawn Nadelen's in studio with us. I was just going to ask, like, are you the type, I need to have a goalie on Tuesday, that's my guy, or can that continue and you play a half and continue this into the season?
We evaluate every position all the time. So if we get a guy, it definitely helps, especially at the goalie position. But we're not apprehensive about playing a couple guys if we need to. When 2017 we go to the Final Four, we ended up going back and forth between starters throughout the regular season and into conference play. Then midway through conference play, Matt Hoy really solidified the starting spot, and he took us to Memorial Day weekend. So it's really, it's a neat thing within our team to see it be so competitive, and those guys understand they have a role to play, and if it's their opportunity, they're going to do it to their best ability. But if somebody else takes it, then they're going to be the best teammate they can as well.
One area where you do have stability is at the faceoff dot, and Matt easy for me to say, Constantinides took a real step up for you guys last season, percentage-wise. What did you see from him? Was it just another year, more growth, and that was that? And how much comfort does it give you to have such stability at an important spot on the field?
Yeah, Matt earned, kind of the top spot as the face-off guy midway through his freshman year, came back sophomore year and really continued to evolve, ran in against, some really tough competition, at the X with the opponents we face. So it really gave him a lot more experience and allowed him to settle down. I probably did a little bit of a disservice throughout Matt because I really leaned on him throughout the season. He was playing well, but again, taking as many faceoffs as he did against really tough competition. I think it kind of wore him down. towards the end of our conference play, and you could see it with them. So we're doing our best to mitigate that, and we have some other really nice options with Rocco Moreno and a couple other younger guys to kind of help Matt out and maybe not put as much pressure on him, but he's continuing to play really well, and we got Rocco backing him up as well.
You mentioned last year there was a lot of uncertainty at the offensive end. This year, probably a few more knowns at this point. Obviously, Nick DeMeo still around, Joaquin Villagomez as well. How's the attack and midfield units looking, and do you feel like that's going to be a group that maybe is a little further ahead of that younger defense or less tested defense, at least this time around?
Yeah, it's interesting on the offensive end. Where on paper we returned quite a few, but again, those guys last year were freshmen, so it's not like we returned juniors and seniors that have started. We do with Nick, guy like Chop Gallagher, who's played quite a bit for us as well. Josh Weber. Those are kind of the three veteran guys that have got a lot of experience that'll be back, and doing good things for us. Joaquin's still growing and learning the game. Guys like Ryan Schreier, Mikey Weishauer, those three next guys are really learning and moving into kind of their roles even more talented, but again, just trying to figure out for us what's the best combination, for those guys, being, whether it be at attack or midfield, and, how do those guys kind of work together.
Speaking of offense, one of the newcomers to your group, a freshman named Ethan Pearson from Colorado, was a big-time goal scorer, was one of the top recruits in the country. I guess, walk me through, how you got connected with this young man, how he ended up coming here from Colorado, and how quickly he might be able to step in and make an impact.
Yeah, Ethan definitely was a bit of a man among boys coming out of high school. He's got a great frame to him, good size, good build. You can definitely get a shot off on the run, physical dodger. Came into the fall looking good. But as we put more pieces into place, I think the game, at the Division I level is a little bit faster.
Sure.
So he's still learning and picking things up. So his learning curve is a little bit bigger right now. So seeing him on the field right now is most likely not going to happen.
Okay.
But we can definitely see, a lot of promise in him, and he's got a heavy shot and not afraid to get it. So he's practicing hard.
Kind of a big picture sport type question. This is the last year where you have a big class of guys that was in school when the pandemic hit, and it obviously has altered a lot of things in the world. But in college lacrosse, what it's been is it's added a roster construction element that's different. What do you feel like are going to be kind of the legacies of this sort of weird COVID era, and is it going to make life easier in some ways to kind of get back to kind of what would be whatever the new normal is, essentially? Obviously, there's other variables in play throughout college sports, but getting it to at least where the roster element is back to sort of what you were used to before.
Yeah, I think the consistency on the roster is going to be, just from my perspective, a little bit more normal. We don't have many fifth years this year. Last year we did. So, again, just recognizing, sometimes you lose track of what year guys are, with COVID and everything. But now we'll get back to that, a little bit more normalcy. Yeah, with the senior class being freshmen, coming out of the heels of 2020, I remember having to go pick up Austin Dukeman from the airport because he's from Canada and his mom couldn't fly in. Me and Coach Musey moving him into his dorm, first time on campus, and our student athletes were the only ones allowed to live on campus. So it's just, again, their transition and kind of what they've had to experience and stuff has definitely been unique. But they're a very strong group, a very tight knit group, and you could see that. That first week they were on campus. We had them over to our house for a barbecue, and they were like, it was like they were fifth year seniors. Just how tight knit they were. They're busting each other's chops and everything. So I think for those guys, being able to fall back on that experience, recognize the connectivity that needs to happen, and to allow that to manifest as they're going into their senior year here.
All right, before we let you go, Coach, the question we of course have had to ask everybody this morning: replay. Have you gotten a system yet for like how you're going to handle this? Who orders the code red? Like, have you worked through what this is going to look like with the scrimmages so far?
We haven't had any scrimmages where we've used it.
Okay.
We most likely won't use it at Towson this year.
Okay.
we'll have it ready, if we visit a team and they're using it and stuff. So not really repping against it. It'll be a little unique. Again, it really comes down to the system.
Was that by choice that you're not going to use it at Towson this year?
Yeah, it's just the equipment and the functionality of everything, and and I think that's going to be place to place. If it's a a really ESPN broadcast game or something, you got multiple camera angles and in tight. But a lot of institutions, they're shooting. You've been to United Stadium.
Yep.
You got one camera shooting from the top of the press box. We talked to the refs about it before a scrimmage last weekend. They're like, look, we're probably not going to see much from that anyway. So, is it really worth potentially burning a timeout, by throwing a challenge flag if you have the red flag in your pocket and being able to get that going. But, for us, it's just, we don't think it's feasible at this point.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Shawn Nadelen, season gets underway Tuesday at Johns Hopkins as Towson looks to get back to CAA championship level. Always appreciate you taking the time for us. Thanks for coming in and hanging out with us this morning. Sorry about your bills. A lot of commiserating, I think, going on with some folks.
Tough time of year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with us. We really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Coach Shawn Nadelen stopping by the studio this morning here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Appreciate him taking the time. We move forward. We just keep plugging along here. We got a busy hour. Hour number 2 is Patrick Stevens is in studio with us. And next up on the hot seat, we head down to Annapolis as they're getting ready to start the season Saturday against Mount St. Mary's. It's a pleasure to welcome in the coach of the Midshipmen. He is Coach Joe Amplo. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us as always.
Guys, always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
So, a lot of headlines with your team, but I think the newcomer on the staff, this new guy that you found, I don't know what his story, this up-and-comer that you brought in, this guy Dave Cottle. Where'd you find this guy? What do you expect out of him? He's Coach, he's actually my former broadcast partner. I love the guy a great deal, but I love the opportunity to have fun with him. What was the thought process? How did this come about?
Well, he's showing signs of promise. I will tell you that there's a lot of potential in him. Listen, through the scenario we were forced into in December, Coach Cottle and I have always been great friends, and he's been a mentor of mine. Through conversations with him, he mentioned that he would have some interest. And once he said that, I was like, all right, how the heck do we make this work to bring this guy back into college lacrosse? Put him around my staff, me personally, and our players. I can think of no better scenario given the circumstances we were forced into. So he's been great. I think there's an energy around him that people are going to be surprised about. He's been extremely valuable with us in the office, and our guys on the field have really started to engage him in a really positive way. So it's been fun.
Joe, when I think about you guys, the first guys whose name comes to mind is Jackson Bonnets, just such a key figure for your defense since the day he showed up on campus. Just what has allowed him to develop into an even better player than he already was when he first arrived, and just how vital is he for what you guys want to do at the defensive end?
Yeah, Patrick, you're talking about the kid who was elected captain of captains here at the Naval Academy. 36 varsity sports. A brigade of midshipmen that are trained to be the world's leaders, and he was elected by his peers to be the captain of that group, which I think is just a remarkable feat, and it's a testament to who he is as a human being. He's done everything right since he's been here and worked to become an elite player, but more so an elite human being. He just goes about his business in a way that is exemplary and really just a beacon of light for us to follow. I do think his relationship with Coach Orson has been terrific, and John being, around some of the country's best through his time at Denver has developed and helped develop Jackson into a very, very solid, good defender.
Coach, your team obviously got off to a bit of a tough start a year ago with a lot of expectations, but we saw in the second half of the year you guys really start to put things together. Did you get a sense of what was going right and how you guys build off that in another year where there's a lot of expectations this year?
Yeah, I think unfair to us internally we had high expectations for last year, and I think we took some things for granted.
Okay.
We started the season 3-0, and then we went on a 6-game skid with some poor play and just not reaching potential. Some injuries allowed us or kind of added to that, but that wasn't the reason. We just didn't. We underachieved, and it's my first time in 23 years of coaching that I can say that I've been around a team that didn't get the most out of itself, and we took that personally. And I do think that is the ingredient we need, and that's the thing that's driving us to hopefully find some success here. We've just got to get the most out of ourselves on a daily basis. That's our goal. If we do that, I believe that there's talent in here that people really aren't talking about right now, which is exciting for me as a guy who likes to prove myself. And hopefully if we find a team within this group that wants to prove themselves, I think we have a chance to do some good things this year on the field.
Sort of an unexpected thing that popped up on you guys last year. You had a great season at the Face-Off X, and then Anthony Gabriel leaves. How is that unit looking with him departing? And I know last year you felt like you had some options in the pipeline, and it turned out to be the case. Do you feel like that's a group that is kind of mirrors the rest of your team that you feel like you guys can surprise some folks with?
Yeah, I mean, look, we want to be around people who want to be here, and we got a group of kids who truly want to be at the Naval Academy, and that's what matters most. And I think, people are going to notice one guy in particular, Zach Hayashi, and the spirit and energy and toughness that he brings. There's no better example of a plebe at midshipman than Zach Hayashi. Right now, if there was an order of merit for the plebes, he'd be close to the top. He does everything right. He had a 4.0 GPA in the fall semester. He's got a smile on his face, and he plays with an energy that is contagious. So I feel very good with him as a newcomer to the face-off group, and the other guys pushing him, that we're certainly going to compete in that area of the field.
What about in goal? Has there been a decision made yet, Coach?
No final decision. I think we're getting closer to it. I want to say it's a game time decision, but we know internally where we're leaning.
Okay.
I think we feel very good about it. The competition from the end of last season, truly through the summer and into the fall, has been excellent, and it's raised the level of play for the guys in that group. And we're going to be happy with who we put in the pipes to start the season on Saturday.
Joe, I think it's the top 5 goal scorers from last season or back, Max Hewitt among them. How have you seen that group kind of develop since last season? And to kind of double back to Glenn's point about Dave Cottle a little bit earlier, how has his work kind of influenced them here over the last month or so?
Yeah, I think if there's one specific area from last year where we felt like we really underachieved, it was on the offensive end. I mean, heck, we were the worst shooting team in the country at 22%. And that's certainly something that we have taken to heart and worked on. But I think more so the thing that I evaluated was we felt like we never had a group that played consistently well together and as a team and had an identity on that end of the field. And bringing in Coach Cottle, he's coached some of the best teams of this generation, and he's been around championship environments his entire career. He knows what that looks like. He knows what it sounds like and feels like. And the one directive that I gave him, if I can give him a directive, he's pretty much telling me what to do, is I just want to have a group of guys that play well together. Whatever that looks like schematically, if we can find 6 guys that we put out there at a time that are going to play together and play like a team on that end of the field, then I do believe with some of the pieces we have, we can score some goals and look pretty good.
Coach Joe Amplo from Navy with us here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, I don't even know how significant of a difference it is. Obviously, Xavier's time with football came up, and so there's, I guess, no split in time the way there's been in past years this year. Does that make a tangible difference for you guys at all?
I gotta think it has to, just for him personally. I mean, I said this earlier to somebody. There's no kid his age that has gone through what he's gone through to be, the starting quarterback, not the starting quarterback at Division I level for Navy, playing in Army Navy games, having success, having some frustration, and then playing another sport at the Division I level at the Naval Academy. That young man has grown in so many ways that so many people don't see. And I'm proud of him for that. And I think that he can, because he can solely focus on this sport, the one that he loves, this semester, we're going to get the best version of what Xavier Arline can be. Whether that's what people say he can be or not, wherever it is, he's going to get the most out of himself. He's uber talented. He's been working his tail off, and he is so focused on being as good as he can be this semester, which is exciting for all of us because he's a wonderful talent.
Saw that Richie Meade was able to speak to you guys last week, and that he's back in town and whatnot for a little bit. And when I think of people that are were great fits for a job, I think about Richie and his time at Navy. Just how meaningful is it to have him kind of reconnecting with the program at this point?
Yeah, it's super humbling. Richie's been a great mentor and now a great friend to me. I said this earlier to another group that was interviewing me, that when I was growing up in this sport, he was one of the pillars that I looked at and an example that I wanted to emulate. And when I think of Navy lacrosse and the success that we're trying to achieve, I point to the teams that Coach Meade coached, and I point to the teams that played so hard and had such an energy, and there was a style of play that people wanted to kind of emulate in those early to mid 2000s. And Coach Meade brought that, and to have him come back and be a part of, us in a small way, and for our guys to know him, a little bit more personally now, I think is really, really important. And there's no better person, there's no better example for someone who loves Navy lacrosse than Coach Meade. And if that came through on Friday when he was with us, that's an unbelievable achievement, because if our guys can play with that love and that passion that he has for this program, then we got a chance to be pretty good.
On the local front, AJ Marsh from McDonough, one of the more highly regarded prospects in the entire country. How quickly, I heard some rave reviews about him from the scrimmage. How quickly do you feel like he can step in and make an impact for you guys?
I think right away what that impact is, it's really up to him. He's got an unbelievable amount of talent. He's got a presence not only on the defensive end, but in the middle of the field. He plays with a joy that is fun to be around. It's just going to be a matter of how quickly does he know how good he can be, and is he willing to put that into play right away. But certainly he can change the way we play, because we're able to do some things that normally we wouldn't be able to do, because we have a player like that on our side.
And then I've been asking all morning, and you guys, of course, have a facility that seems like it'd be equipped for handling replay responsibilities. But what do you make of what this is going to look like? Have you gotten a sense for how much you guys are going to be able to use replay in this first year, and the functionality of it, and when it's appropriate, the challenge when it isn't? How much have you been able to spend time with that, Coach?
We've had 2 days of scrimmages, and I am 1 for 3 in challenge scenarios. I will say, of the 3 scenarios, if it were a game, I probably would not have thrown the flag.
Okay.
Aside from the last one, because I won't name the official, but he strongly recommended that I throw the flag. Probably because he felt bad that he said we had too many men on the field the previous possession and we didn't. So he was giving one back to me. But we did it more for just practicing the scenario of, all right, what does it look like? What does our team do when the refs are reviewing it, and what is the start and stop of that event due to a team as they're playing a game? So I don't know how big of an impact it's going to make in the regular season. There might be a 40% of the time that teams are going to utilize it in a game.
Yeah.
And then, thinking back to last year, I don't know how many scenarios I would have even thought of challenging. So
That's fair. Obviously, everybody's talking about how important it'll be for the NCAA tournament, for the whole sport. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. Coach Joe Amplo, as we mentioned, things get underway Saturday against Mount St. Mary's at Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium. Really appreciate taking the time for us, as always. Looking forward to seeing you during the season. Thanks so much for hopping on with us.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Coach Joe Amplo from Navy. So let's try to do thumbnails. The last 2 teams that we chatted with, Towson and Navy. Your thoughts on both?
Towson, a team that clearly has some questions on the defensive end at this point. Maybe a little bit more experience, but not super old by any stretch on the offensive end. And so, having a face-off guy like Constantinides, see, I got it. I got it on the first try.
And I'm the broadcaster. That's not a good sign.
It's not.
No.
It's not. But I'd practiced that.
You know what's funny too. I don't know if I've ever shown you my charts. Whenever I do the games, I only put the names on phonetically, right? I don't spell them out because I don't even want to think about it. And then I made my cheat sheet for today, and like an idiot, I didn't.
You didn't spell it out.
Like a big dummy.
But they do have a good face-off guy. So I think that they're a team that I'm not sure they're going to be quite at Delaware's level in the CAA this year. But at the same time, they
did beat Delaware last year.
They did beat Delaware.
Yeah.
They split with Delaware. And so are they going to be at Delaware's level? Maybe, but I could certainly imagine them being the second or third best team in that league. I think there's a lot of question marks in that league. Like Stony Brook still has Dylan Palinetti. It feels like has been there for 5 years, even 5 or 6 years, even though he began his career at Maryland of all places. And then you've got teams like Drexel and Hofstra and a couple others in that mix. But I think Towson can certainly be a contender in that league. But Delaware, I think, begins the year as the clear-cut favorite there. As for Navy, definitely got the sense talking to Joe just now. It dovetails with everything else I know about them that they feel like they do have something to prove, and that they, the truth of the matter is he's right. They were not a good offensive team last year. It was really hard to watch them at times, particularly in the first half of the season. They kind of figured some things out later on in the year where they were able to create some problems for some people, but it still wasn't necessarily easy on the eyes. So I think Dave Cottle has a challenge in front of him, and you and I both know Dave. That's something that there's always sort of a mad scientist element to him, and so I think he's going to enjoy kind of piecing these things together and whatnot. And from what I understand, like Dave has thrown himself. Like I don't think Joe entirely sold it. Like Dave has really thrown himself into this project for this spring. So I'm curious to see what he's able to do with a lot of pieces that had some decent production, but just didn't quite fit together as well as they would have liked. Defensively, I think Navy's going to be fine, and regardless of who's in goal, I think they're going to be okay at that end of the field. The face-off's a big question, though. Losing Anthony Gabriel, who had been a guy that was untested last year, goes for 60% and then transfers for Virginia. That's a big loss for them, because that was something that if they were thinking going into last year, if you can just get the ball, and they got the ball, and then a bunch of other things went wrong. Basically, that was the one thing that went right. So not a great 23 for the Mids by the standard of their expectations. I think they're going to be better this season. Don't know if that means they're much better than third or fourth in the Patriot League.
Yeah, it's a loaded league, obviously. All right, so we continue along, and next up on the hot seat, he is, of course, the head coach down at Maryland, and they're getting ready to start the season Saturday on the road at Richmond. He is Coach John Tillman, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick Stevens. Always appreciate you taking the time for us. Thanks so much for hopping on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Coach, a lot, obviously, with your team to cover, and I think the first place is we start with the guys that are maybe coming back this season, and I know how important Eric Maliver is, but I guess the other word is between the pipes. Is Logan McNaney ready to go to start the season? And you got some pretty good goalie play at times a year ago when he was gone. What's that going to look like during the course of the year?
Yeah, I think a tough ask to throw a freshman into the schedule that we have here, and I thought Roop he definitely gave us a chance to win almost every game we played, and again kind of getting thrown in game 2 with not a lot of preseason to be able to get the experience that you want. So I'm very thankful for kind of his approach and obviously the way the guys kind of fought in front of him. But like any freshman, right, you're going to have your good moments, bad moments. But I know we have a lot of faith in Brian and Logan coming back. I think, the guys feel the same way. Logan, there's just a comforting feel of he's been there. He's proven he's played well in the big moments. His record speaks for itself. And so there's not too much that happens on the field that Logan's going to be surprised at. And not only, whether it's, the shooters that he sees, but also in the clearing game and changing defenses. And he just never seems to get rattled. And I think that is something that, as a coach, you just love to have a guy like that regardless of what's going on in the game, when they bring it in, they have a huddle, the guys are going to have confidence in him.
When you look at what you've been able to get out of the tradition of the number one jersey through the years, last year, obviously a little bit of a breakthrough there, putting Brett Makar, a defensive player, in there, another defensive player this year, Ajax Zapatello. What is it about Ajax that sort of led to that honor, and how healthy is he and ready to go is he as he heads into his senior year?
Yeah, I think we thought long and hard about last year, if we were gonna, stay with more of an offensive theme with the number one. But I think as a staff, we just kept coming back to what Brett Makar has meant to our program on and off the field and who he was. So I just felt like it was very fitting. I think there's also, with that number, there becomes more eyeballs on you and there's a little more scrutiny. So having somebody, that can handle that spotlight, and is not going to really be impacted, and again, a lot of times the guys who have been best wearing that number were guys that really weren't seeking the number. They were kind of like, well, I'm not a number guy. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of almost the answer you'd like, because they're just playing because they love to play. They're not seeking any, accolades or, recognition. And I think, Brett's been that way. And obviously Ajax, very similar. I think being around Brett for those 3 years really helped Ajax. Just Brett's consistency. You just knew what you're getting from Brett every single day. He was very locked in. He was very focused. He was a very selfless guy. He was a hard worker. Details mattered. He was very passionate. He was, a guy that cared about his teammates. So I think Ajax is wired a lot of that way, a lot of those ways. But I think he's another guy that he's going to come do his thing regardless of what number he wears. I think there was a lot of pride for him to wear 36 because that's what Jesse Bernhardt wore. And there's a number of other great players, and I could go on and on, but, like Timmy Muller, there's been a great tradition of guys wearing that number. But we just felt like it made sense. And there were several other guys we could have gone with. But again, I think Ajax, it's just business as usual. He's a guy that since the day he's gotten here, he's had a great approach. He's made guys around him better. I think when you think of like a guy who is a Maryland Terp, on and off the field, his character, his toughness, his relentlessness, his investment, I just think Ajax is a great representative, and we'll see what happens next year. We've kind of waited till the spring and given the guys the fall. And luckily it's just not been a distraction. It's just kind of the guys were like happy for Ajax and we just kept moving on.
You've obviously had a number of successful seasons at Maryland. Maybe last year was a little more challenging, certainly much more challenging than the year before when you went undefeated and won a national title. How do you feel like guys have responded to how that all unfolded last year? Because obviously not every year you're going to have injury luck that works out for you the way it had the previous couple years, and obviously didn't have last year. Obviously some teams are going to be a little more experienced than others. This one's probably somewhere in the middle between those last two. But how have you seen some of these holdovers respond to having gone through a year like last year where it frankly wasn't all that easy for you guys to accomplish as much as you did?
Yeah, I think, part of what you hope happens through this journey that the guys go on, right? They come to college and you want as many things to happen that could replicate what's going to happen to them after they leave here. So obviously learning how to handle success is one thing, but also handling adversity, and guys having to make sacrifices and the ability to stay, like in the moment and stick-to-itiveness and, bouncing back from things, that sense of resiliency. I think, you obviously you're trying to win every game, but when you don't win, you try to learn. You try to teach the guys, and you want them to learn. Hey, sometimes life throws you curveballs. You've got to handle it the right way. No one's going to feel sorry for you. And next guy's got to be ready. If you're on the team, like injuries happen, so you got to always prepare like a starter. And then as a coach, you just have to be ready to, all right, if somebody does go down, what do we need to do differently? Do we need to tweak things so that this group, based on injuries, can be more successful, not just plug him in and expect the same results? So, adapting to what you do have. And at times last year, I think our guys learned, like when they were locked in and we were playing well, we could play as well as anybody. I think they also learned that, hey, if you don't do little things right, or we're not on the same page, or we're sloppy, or another team is playing very well, hey, we're pretty pedestrian, like we're susceptible. So we just have to make sure that we are executing at a high level. We are detailed oriented. We are doing what we need to do. We're competing at a high level. We're playing unselfishly, and we've got to do that for 60 minutes plus, or hey, it may not go well.
1 week from this Saturday, you see coaches overlooking CQ Stadium right now. They'll be taking on Loyola there for their home opener 1 week from Saturday. Coach John Tillman with us here on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, I brought up Eric. I don't want to just move right past it. Given how significant he was 2 years ago, I know you guys ended up having plenty of capable scorers last season. Is it reasonable to expect that Eric might come back and be a bit of an alpha for you offensively this year?
Well, I think he'll be an important part for us. Having that experience, I think is really important. But we have to remember, he hasn't played in a game in 2 years. So I think we got to be realistic in terms of our expectations that, like anybody, my sense typically is that, guys, it takes a little time to get back to where you were. And I think there's always a tendency with athletes, right? You want to pick up where you left off, and sometimes you can try to do too much. And I think that's something that, we got to be careful with him, is just to, let him get back, get comfortable, take what the game gives him. Don't feel like, you need to get back to where you used to be. You're going to get there. And let's do it out of our scheme. Obviously having Braden with a year of experience with him, those guys have good chemistry. They're both from Atlanta. They're good friends. I think it's just nice to have, two guys with good amount of experience down there, and two guys that I do think they enjoy playing with each other, and they do have good chemistry already. And again, not having either guy feel like, hey, they need to make the play every time. It's really just playing good offense, and out of the offense, taking what the other team gives you and making sure that we're not trying to do too much.
Obviously a new offensive coordinator, a late hire, bringing Mike Phipps over from Navy to replace Jake Bernhardt, who went up to Colby College up in Maine. How have the guys responded here over the last few weeks in the preseason, since obviously you didn't get to work with Mike during the fall, since he wasn't hired until late December?
The transition's been very good. I think a lot of that is due to Mike's personality. Anybody that knows Michael Phipps, he's a pretty easy guy to get along with. He's just a very welcoming guy. He's a guy that, part of the reason why he's here is he's really big on relationships. And I think that's something that I heard through the process, and I haven't known Michael for a long time. We wanted somebody that was going to be very big in terms of the relationship part. I feel like that's a big part of it now with the kids these days, and the college athletes is, getting to know the players, and the players getting to know you, and building that rapport and that trust. And I think he's done a good job of that. Michael and I spent a lot of time over the break, just in early conversations when the job was open, but also, once he decided to take the job, there's just a lot of similarities in terms of the things that, when we coach, things that we believed in, principles, philosophies. But there were some things that maybe he has done that we haven't done that we felt like we could bring into the fold. Since Matt Rambo and Colin Heacock left, we took a big turn in 2018 in terms of style of play. And I think every year we've tweaked it a little bit. We've stayed true to a lot of the things that we want to try to do. And I don't think right now we're trying to blow it all up all over again. So finding somebody that, again, just believed in a lot of things that we believed in. And Michael had watched a lot of our games. Some of his terminology, to be honest, is exactly what we call things. So I think that's made that transition a lot easier. And I think the guys have really enjoyed it so far. Certainly a lot to work on this time of year, just getting kind of your timing down, working on your execution, your stick work. But it's been fun so far.
I need to ask, Coach, is there any answer yet about Dante Trader and whether or not he's going to be spending any time with you guys this year?
I'd say no final answer. Okay. I realized last year was a lot for him, going right from football and having about a week or so and then joining us. I felt like he never really got a time to catch his breath. And then he did have, dealt with a big injury last year while he was with us. And I think part of it was pre-existing. And my only, disappointment with that is I know how good a player Dante is. Yeah. And if he was fully healthy, I think he would have played more to the level that he wanted to, because his standards are so high. He was great for us. I was really thankful for all the things he did for us, and he did a lot. But if you'd seen a healthy Dante, I think you would have seen even more, just because I have that much faith in him as a player. We've left the door open for him. I think, doing what he's done, he's been going at a really, like, if you know Dante, he only knows one speed, and smashing into big bodies for the last, 6-7 months, it does take its toll. A lot of times you're coming up to tackle guys that are pretty big. So, I think right now the biggest thing is for him to kind of mentally, catch his breath, physically catch his breath. And if he decides to join us, obviously we'd love to have him. And if he doesn't, we're going to be really grateful for the time that he gave us last year. And I'm just a big fan. I know our guys are too. He'll stop by the office, or he'll stop by the locker room. We really care about him a lot. He's just a really good guy. So if he decides that he wants to do it and it works with his schedule, we're certainly open to it. And if Coach Lax is, willing to do it, that'd be great too. So we'll just see what happens.
We'll look forward to seeing a lot about this team during the course of the season. As I mentioned, gets underway on the road on Saturday down at Richmond. Coach John Tillman, always appreciate you. We'll be checking in during the course of the year. Thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us this morning as we get ready for the start of the season.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for covering lacrosse. We appreciate it.
It's Coach John Tillman from down at the University of Maryland. And last up, we just keep moving along here in the College Lacrosse Preview Show. We head to Catonsville, where we are joined by the head coach of the UMBC Retrievers. He's Coach Ryan Moran. And he still has a couple of weeks to get his team ready to play, as they're still a couple weeks away from their first official game of the season on February 16th against Drexel. Coach, it's Glenn and Patrick. It's always great to catch up. Thank you for spending a couple of minutes with us this morning.
Sure. Glad to be here.
Coach, I think I've asked you about this before. The late start, is it purposeful with you? Is it something that you prefer to let's maybe not be playing when we're going to be battling snow or anything like that?
No, we just have had some really good scrimmages, and I have a really good relationship with the Princeton coach, and they have to start later. They're February 1st, so they usually start around the same weekend that we do, and I felt like having a Princeton scrimmage is every bit as valuable as opening up the season against any opponent. So, our first official game might be a little later, but I think this 3 scrimmages we have this year are really going to help us be prepared to, jump in the season running.
Ryan, when you look back at last season, obviously got off to a really good start, the 4-0 start, including kind of that postponed game against Towson there. But I'm curious, for you guys, after that it was just sort of alternating wins and losses. I mean, do you feel like consistency was something that was maybe a little elusive, and has that been kind of a priority for you guys this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, clearly we're not a very consistent team in the second half. We're not nearly as consistent as we were in the first half. I think, some of that's attributed to that early season success. I thought our guys felt like, hey, we're doing well, things are going good, but it truly is, once you get into conference play, a different season. And I don't think we kind of turned that switch as quickly as the other teams. And then you end up with a close Bryant loss, and then just a bad loss to Albany, probably our worst game of the year. And then in conference play, you're 2 games down. You kind of dug yourself a pretty big hole early in conference play there. And that's where we found ourselves, and we were not able to get out of it.
You were one of the top defenses in the country a year ago, and I know that's been a calling card, and you bring back an Ethan Robinson. Is it fair to assume that this will again be a team that's sort of built around strong defense and limiting opponents?
Sure. I mean, we like to pride ourselves on playing complementary lacrosse. I have been very pleased with both sides of the ball in the first 3 weeks that we've been playing. We have a lot of experienced guys coming back on offense as well. So I think if you play good offense, it lends itself to playing good defense, and hopefully you could be pretty tied up in the middle of the field. But historically, we have done a good job in that defensive end of the field, especially from a statistical standpoint.
One of those guys at the offensive end that you alluded to a moment ago was Mateo Brown, who had 34 goals for you as a junior last year, taking a big jump. What was kind of behind that, and just what do you see as an encore potential for him this spring?
Well, extremely happy for Mateo last year. He's the type of kid that just really hardworking, humble kid. So usually things will work out for kids that stay the course like that, and it certainly did for him. We're just going to look to continue to improve, areas of his game. He's very good at getting to the goal, very strong scorer. We're trying to, obviously, with all of our guys, take some of their weaknesses and try and turn them into strengths, and maybe see if he could be a better feeder. He draws a lot of attention, finding the open guy. But I'm hoping, we stay healthy, and Mateo can have as good a season this year as he did last year.
He is, of course, Ryan Moran, UMBC lacrosse coach. He is with us here on GCR in the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Coach, who else, like, as you try to take that next step forward, and you talk about playing complementary lacrosse, who else do you feel like might be ready to step up and help make that jump in being a more complete team?
It really is not about individuals, and I hate to say it, and I'm not kind of dodging the question. Really, it's everyone buying in, everyone sacrificing, everyone understanding what their role is specific to the team, and being passionate about that role. So that's really what we preach to our guys on a day-to-day basis. But from a standpoint on both sides of the ball, it's good to have Brian Dragoning back. Yeah. He was pretty much injured all of last year. He broke his foot at the end of the fall, and he never really, I think, got too comfortable coming back from that. And I'm hoping this year, so far so good. He's looked great in the fall. He's looked good in preseason so far. So having him back at full strength will be great. And having Michael Doty back at full strength. I mean, he hurt his knee pretty bad in the first game versus Drexel. He's a tough kid. He came back in like 5 weeks, but he was playing the second half of that season kind of injured too. So those two guys, if they can stay healthy along with Mateo, I think could create a pretty formidable attack that we like. And then defensively, I definitely got to mention Trey Fleece as a guy that can really help us. He's taken that next step as a short stick D midi, just great motor, plays hard, can get doing really well on the wings, has the type of attitude and mentality that you want out of a short stick D midi. So I think his play could really lend to us having a strong year on that side of the field.
In the cage, Jason Ting last year, over 50% saves, under 10 goals a game allowed. And that came after having had a little bit of experience, but not a ton in 2022. How much more settled do you feel like he is, and how good do you feel about the goalie situation as you head into the year?
Yeah, I'm very happy with how Jason's been playing. Very proud of him for the year that he had last year. We're hoping that he can build upon that, maybe even have a better year this year. He's a comfortable, confident kid, and that's what you get when you're in the fourth year in the program and you have a whole year of starting under your belt. And then Connor McMahon, who is right now playing really well as well. He's a kind of local kid from Spalding, and he's gotten some chances in the scrimmages his freshman year and this year. And every time he gets in, he's just not very rattled at all. Seems very calm, cool, collected. So I'm happy what I see out of him as well.
Is it, Coach, I don't know how much you guys talk about this stuff, but this is UMBC Lacrosse, right? It's a program with a lot of tradition, a lot of history. And do you guys have conversations about, hey, it's time for us. It's time for us to make that jump and get back into competing for championships and being in the NCAA tournament?
I don't think it's something you really have to talk about too much. I think the kids all understand that that's what they want to do. That's our goal. We take a lot of pride in trying to be as competitive as we can within our conference and win our conference. I think for a lot of teams, we're no different. That's your most sure way to get into the NCAA tournament. But I think our kids are very proud of where they play and the tradition that UMBC has. We try to honor that with our play and practice and in our games. And, we're working our tails off and aspiring to try and be a playoff team and get back to being a team that can get to the quarterfinals, one game away from the Final Four like they were, I think it was in 2009. So,
question I've asked a couple guys this morning. I'll throw out to you for your perspective. The COVID era has been very unusual in a lot of ways, but particularly in terms of the way that people are kind of forced into roster construction and some choices that are made here and there. How has that process gone for you guys? And do you feel like there's going to be much of an adjustment or not much of an adjustment at all after this year, once most of the guys that would have been on campus when the pandemic hit will have graduated and used up their eligibility?
I think it will make things a little bit more settling.
Mm-hmm.
We were a team last year where I thought I was going to have 3 starters coming back. And then, 1 or 2 of them decide to transfer, and then one decides, hey, I'm just kind of beat up and I got a good job offer. So for us, I felt like it kind of hurt, if I'm being perfectly transparent. So now that's gone, I think we just get back to some normalcy and, hopefully have our roster start being a little bit more manageable with the limits there.
And then we've been asking everybody all morning. I don't know what the plans are for you guys from the America East as far as replay is concerned. I don't even know if you guys got to use it at Hopkins last week. But have you dove into it, started thinking about when you throw the flag, when you don't? Like, how much have you spent time with replay and just your thoughts in general about it being introduced this year?
Well, as a conference, we've kind of said that if you have the technology to use it, you can use it. I think we're a little bit 50-50 in the conference play of places that feel like they have the technology to use it. We all have like our sports editing system where you can kind of use and look back on film, but those angles might not really be enough to push the needle one way or another for an official to overturn a call. So I feel like we kind of jumped into this replay thing pretty quickly because of just one play in the Final Four, if I'm being honest. And it's not the easiest thing to do and to navigate and to effectively administer in a game. And we've got, at least for me and a lot of the other coaches that I've spoken with, it's been kind of spotty on, are we doing this? Is this happening? How is it happening? So kind of just like reserving judgment and taking guidance from the officials and from the conference and taking it probably hopefully like one game at a time, get better at it.
I get it. You haven't tried to like practice your flag throw or anything like that just in case you use it, have you?
No, I have no flag throwing yet in practice.
All right, we'll have to work on that. You got to make sure it's you can't. You got to. I feel like it says something about a coach, how determined they are with their flag throws. I feel like it's a statement, Ryan.
I think I'd be more like a Belichick and just kind of
drop it down in front of them.
Yeah, not gonna throw it anywhere. Just throw it on the ground.
I appreciate it. As we mentioned, 2 weeks from Friday, the season gets underway when they host Drexel at UMBC Stadium. Coach Ryan Moran, always appreciate you, man. Thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us this morning. Look forward to chatting with you as the season goes on. All right.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
Coach Ryan Moran from UMBC, seventh and final coach on the hot seat this morning. I'm late getting a break, so we're going to grab a break. Then I'm going to let you give the thumbnails on the rest of the teams, and we'll do a quick national hit when we come back in. All right? Patrick Stevens is here. It is the College Lacrosse Preview Show.
Hungry? With 7 locations throughout Maryland, Glory Days Grill is always right around the corner. They have wings, burgers, salads, sandwiches, and drinks to satisfy everyone, as well as tons of televisions and sound delivered right to your phone. Whether you're a Ravens fan or rooting for one of those other guys, Glory Days is the best place to watch football or whatever your favorite sport is. While you're there, be sure to check out Goose Flights Lager, named in honor of legendary Raven Tony Goose Siragusa. $2 of every can is donated to the Goose Flights Foundation. Glory Days Grill, Grill. Great food, good sports.
Why bet with the big boys this football season? Instead, try your hand with the local book, Superbook Sports, this fall. Superbook Sports is the book next door. Just a dedicated team of the best odds makers in Las Vegas, making sure you get the best prices and parlays anywhere. And now, Superbook will give you a bonus of up to $250 when you sign up and wager on the same day and use the promo code GlennClark23, GLENNCLARK23. So bet with the best and use the promo code GlennClark23 this football season with Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
6 chicken tenders made from fresh, never frozen Royal Farms world-famous chicken, a family-sized order of Western fries, honey mustard dipping sauce, and a 2-liter bottle of Dr. Pepper. It's Royal Farms' new Tucker's Tenders Meal. It's Justin Tucker's favorite, and at only $19.99, it'll be your favorite meal, too. The new Tucker's Tenders Meal, available only at Royal Farms. Now you can kick back, relax, and eat like a champion. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Jeremy Kahn here. The ultimate sports betting experience in Maryland is at the Green Turtle Bet Park Sportsbook. Join me at either location in Canton or in Towson and place your bets in person and be a part of the action. It's the best in-class sports wagering experience, complete with the ultimate TV package, ensuring you can catch every game all day, every day. Their state-of-the-art facilities bring Las Vegas energy right here to Maryland just in time for postseason football. So visit the Green Turtle Bet Park Sportsbook in Canton and Towson and elevate your game day experience and hang out with me to bet, watch, and win at the Turtle.
Hey Ravens fans, looking for the perfect new game day brew? Get a Guilford, Baltimore's finest craft beer during the next home game at the Bank. That's not all. Gather your flock next home game and check out Guilford Hall Brewery's brand new bar, the Gilly Nest, located near Section 505. No tickets? No problem. Enjoy all Ravens games all season long at our restaurant and brewery in Station North. Guilford Hall Brewery, European tradition, Baltimore charm. Hey Griffin, can you let everybody know what's going on at Live Casino and Hotel these days?
Yeah, Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. It is the place to be, especially at Sports and Social, which features an on-site FanDuel location. It is going to be your ultimate spot to watch the big game on their massive 100-foot media wall. So order up your favorite game day bites, take a sip from our signature crushes, and extensive beer selections, all just steps from the FanDuel Sportsbook. Watch, wager, and win at Sports and Social at Live Casino in Hotel Maryland. Adirondack Mills must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, we are winding down on the College Lacrosse Preview Show. Patrick Stevens with us in studio. Patrick, your thumbnails on both I guess let's start with UMBC because I feel like there's probably a little bit more to say about Maryland.
Yeah, I think for UMBC we can expect a team built similarly, from the defense out. Certainly some guys on the offensive end that you can feel comfortable about being proven options for them. I think that's a team that if they can achieve a little bit more consistency, which they obviously did not have in the second half of the season last year, that they should be able to get themselves back into the America East Tournament.
And then Maryland, they get pieces back. Is it a team that moves right back into national championship conversation?
I think it's certainly a team that is capable of at least winning a game in the tournament if they can stay healthy. And the truth is for them last year is if they had been healthy, and really at the defensive end, for as much as everybody looked at, well, they don't have as much offensive experience, and even looked at the fact that their first midfield unit wasn't as productive as they really wanted it to be, but their second midfield was really good. Like they had, you might not say that their options 2 and 3 were as good as you would want them to be, but options 4, 5, 6, 7 were all really, really good in the midfield relative to what you would normally want. It was the fact that they got dinged up. It was that Zappatello was out the last quarter of the season. It was the fact that John Geppert was hurt. It was the fact that Logan McNaney wasn't there, and you're putting a freshman goalie in a tough spot. And yeah, he had an awesome highlight at the end and saved that Virginia game for them. And you can't take that away. But there were certainly between, other teams scouting and not having as much help in front of him, or at least less healthy help, kind of in a vulnerable spot. So if they can stay healthy back there, I expect them to be pretty buttoned up. There are some questions about the defensive midfield. It's not just simply Dante Trader, Geppert as well gone. And so you look at that, but the offense should be better as well. And so, is there a little bit of an adjustment period to a new coordinator? I don't know if it's really going to matter all that much. I mean, this is the third offensive coordinator they'll have had in 3 years, and I don't think that they really changed a whole lot. The personnel just wasn't as lethal as it was the previous year when you had Wisnauskas and Kahn, and Donville, and all those, and DeMeo and all those guys. So I think if you're Maryland, you're just kind of looking for a more stable year. There was a little bit of whack-a-mole going on there, and no one's shedding any tears for Maryland over that, because and John Tillman will tell you there weren't that many injuries that they had to deal with in 2022. They lost a short stick defensive midfielder, Josh Kaufman, to injury, but for the most part, that was a team that was loaded and stayed healthy. And last year, between the Molliver injury in the preseason and McNaney and everything else, there just wasn't stability. If Maryland can have the sort of stability, even a reasonable amount, you can bank on them probably being a team that's in there in that final 8. And, John Tillman in a quarterfinal is a pretty good bet historically. So would not be surprised if they're sitting there as one of the last 4 teams standing on Memorial Day weekend. Although I think most people would agree heading into the year that the teams that look most imposing are, in some order, we'll do it alphabetical: Duke, Notre Dame, and Virginia.
All right, so let's talk about it. Biggest national storylines. You bring up Duke, of course, Brennan O'Neill, who turned a lot of heads at the World Championships over the summer. I would assume he sort of headlines the list of storylines going into the season.
Yeah, I think he does. I mean, I think too. There's 4 Tewaaraton finalists who are back this season. You've got O'Neill, who won the award. You've got Connor Schellenberger from Virginia, who might have won it had he been healthy the full season. He missed a game in there and frankly wasn't right for about a month or so, but played really well at the end of the year. Pat Kavanaugh's back at Notre Dame. C.J. Kirst, frankly, might end up with better numbers than any of them, basically being the center of the Cornell offense. That's 4 really, really good players. There's a reason why when we did our preseason All-America team for Lacrosse Magazine that we had 4 attackmen on the first team and 3 on the second and 3 on the third. That was the only time that I insisted that we fudge things a little bit there. I wasn't putting any of those dudes down on the second team in the preseason, not one chance. So, for Duke, you get to the final day of the season, and how much does that fuel you in the offseason? And you've obviously got some veteran players, Kenny Brower on defense, O'Neill, Dyson Williams, the Canadian finisher on attack. There's a lot to work with there in Durham. It's been 10 years since Duke's won a national title. It feels like they've been in the mix just about every year, right?
Yeah.
But it's been 10 years since Duke's won a national title, and so this feels like a team that should have. They have not quite the same, but a similar intersection of ability and incentive that Notre Dame had last year. You don't have the snub, right? There's not quite as much incentive getting as much fire being thrown into that, or fuel being thrown into that fire. But I think that that's something I'm fascinated to see with Notre Dame is you've won a title, you finally reached the mountaintop after all these years, and you did it with a team that was just so motivated from the start for good reason. How do you respond to that this year? And I think, as much as that's a variable, I think they might have had as significant a loss as anybody's had, just because they had a kid, Brian Tevlin, that they brought in from Yale.
Okay.
And this was a dude that took face-off wings. He ran on their midfield. He was a defensive midfielder. He picked up a pole on man down and played out there for that. I mean, in some ways, statistically it isn't going to show up, but that was one of the most valuable players in the country last year, and was a captain after showing up 3 months, after 3 months or so. So super valuable player, probably going to take multiple guys to fill all the roles that he filled. So how does Notre Dame deal? I think they're going to be fine. And then you got Virginia, which had a lot, still has a lot back from a team that was really, really good. They still have a guy in Kastner on close defense that's really, really good. They still have a ton of offensive pieces, although, they have to replace Xander Dixon, who set a school record for goals last year, which is no small thing given some of the names that have passed through there. They still have Schellenberger, and they still have a lot. So those are the three teams that I think most people are generally looking at as the teams that are going to be heard from as much as anybody. But there are some other storylines throughout the country as well.
So let's just I'll wrap with this. You bring up the 3 ACC teams. Then if we threw the Big Ten teams in whatever order after that, separate them. If there's a team playing on Memorial Day weekend that's not one of those 6-7 teams, I guess, whatever, from the ACC, but if there is an outsider that you think would have a chance of making a run and being interesting, who would that be?
I'll give you two teams. We'll start with Cornell, the cursed factor. I think that they're getting bigger and more athletic. You talk to coaches in the Ivy League, and you get the sense that this is just the beginning. Maybe you're not going to have a cursed every year,
right?
But their roster is getting better and better and better. The other team that I would point out is Yale. And it's funny, everybody has this image of Yale as just tough and rugged, and defensively they just grind you down. The truth of the matter is they might have the scariest attack out of anybody in the country right now. With Brandow and Lyons and Leo Johnson, that is you're really picking your poison there. Like, it is hard to slow them down. The question is can they get enough stops? You look at what happened to them at the end of last season in both tournaments. They just couldn't get enough stops. And so if they can get the defense to even just a decent level, they are going to be a total handful. And the thing is like Andy Shea's figured out a lot of things in building that program up enough to be able to win a title and to make it back to Memorial Day. I really think that's a team to keep an eye on as well. And by the way, one other subplot, since there is a local tie here. Dave Petramala heading to North Carolina, now the defensive coordinator for the Tar Heels, working. His sons both play at Carolina as well, and so does that kind of invigorate? And there were multiple staff changes down at Carolina, a team that frankly I saw them in person against Syracuse in the middle of April, and they just looked slow. They just did not look as athletic as Syracuse, a team that should be better too, by the way, this year. But I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see unfold down there. Can Carolina get back into that top tier? Because it feels like the gap, and we saw it when they had 4 games down the stretch. I think it was 2 Notre Dames, a Duke, and 2 Notre Dames, a Syracuse, and a Virginia.
Okay.
And the gap in athleticism, and particularly those Notre Dame and Virginia games, just the gap in ability was significant. Can they make that up? Because that could make the ACC even more interesting than it already is if Carolina is back to being a feisty team capable of winning a game or two in the tournament.
We'll be talking about it. Obviously, we'll still talk college basketball with Patrick on Tuesdays moving forward, but we'll be doing a little bit of both, and then move into mostly lacrosse until Memorial Day weekend. Before we let you go, I'm told the tidbit of the day today is lacrosse related, so I'm guessing, and you said Brian Powell helped out with this one?
Yes, Brian Powell.
I'm going to guess he geared it towards Patrick and not towards me, if that's the case.
We'll see. I mean, it's Maryland related.
All right, we'll see. Tidbit of the day is brought to you today by Superbook. Use the code GlennClark23 when you sign up at Superbook. You'll receive up to $250 in a same-day first bet match, win or lose, from our friends at Superbook.
So Jared Bernhardt, who joined the Maryland coaching staff over the offseason, he is the director of player development now for the Terps. He is second in career goals at Maryland.
Of course, for those who don't remember, Jared Bernhardt was also a football player, spent some time with the Falcons, obviously a hell of a lacrosse player. Tewaaraton winner, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he won it in 21.
Yep, and then ended up playing quarterback at Ferris State after that, and then was a wide receiver for a little bit with the Falcons. Hawks.
That is correct. So Brian wants to see if you guys can name the top 8 goal scorers in Maryland history. Bernhardt is number 2 at 202.
Well, we got Joe Walters is on there.
Joe Walters is top 4.
Top 4.
153.
And Logan Wisnauskas would be up there as well.
He is number 1.
Okay.
205 for Wisnauskas.
Okay, so we've got Wisnauskas,
Bernhardt, Walters.
And Walters.
Missing number 3.
3. Well, the thing about this is as great as Maryland's players have been over the years, it's likely that most of those guys are all within the last 15 to 20 years or so.
There are 3 that would be outside.
All right,
we have 5 left. There's 2 that are post 2006.
So I was going to say, is Matt Rambo one of them?
Matt Rambo is number 3, 155. 2 more than Joe Walters.
I'm going to toss out a guy that's also recent vintage. Grant Catalino?
Not Grant Catalino.
Huh. I mean, we could sit here and throw any number of names out from like the 80s and 70s, 80s,
I was
going to
say Frank Urso.
Frank Urso, top 8, 127 for Urso.
I am surprised that there's more older guys. To your point, the number of games, the sheer.
I mean, you think about great goal scorers from before, like Matt Hahn's one of those names that comes up.
Matt Hahn is number 5 on the list.
Go.
149.
What about Shannon? He wasn't really a big time goal
he
scorer.
He didn't play 4 seasons there either.
Oh,
That's
really?
the thing. Yeah, he started his career at Princeton. So, so you said there's one more that's recent vintage?
Yes.
Okay. But we've only got 2 guys left anyway. So
yeah. One from the 90s. And then let me figure out when this guy graduated. Yeah, and then pretty recent, within the last.
Connor Kelly.
Connor Kelly, yes.
And is the one from
Number
the 90s? Scott Hockstead?
No, not Scott Hockstead.
I've told you some Scott Hockstead stories, haven't I?
I think you have.
Yeah.
I think you have.
Wandered into a party once, and I was like, I should not be here. I was very kind of into invite, but I walked in, I looked around the room, and I said, nope, nope, this is not going to be for me. God bless you.
I'm blanking on who it is, actually. And I shouldn't.
If you're not getting it, there's no chance that I'm getting it.
So you're ready for it? Number 6 with 137, Rob Wurzburger.
Okay.
Wurzburger.
All right. Very good.
Who has the most goals in college lacrosse all time with 221?
It's got to be somebody recently because they would have to have had a 5th year, right? Or is it Thompson?
Oh, it's O'Keefe from Penn State.
It is
right?
Mac O'Keefe.
All
yes.
right.
221.
Is that it?
Yeah, we can make that it.
Very good.
Next to our Duke players, if you care.
Wisnauskas
is 4th.
Okay, it's Gutterding.
Gutterding is 3rd.
And
he's 2nd.
He's 2nd. And the number 3 was what? Was that Danowski or was it Greer?
It was Zach Greer. Yes.
Zach Greer.
There you go. I mean, you knew he was getting it. I don't know why we thought anything other than that.
So Bernhardt would be top 5. Those are the only 5 with 200 goals in college lacrosse.
How about that? Were they all
Greer.
guys that got extra years?
No, Greer
did because
he did. Okay.
He was one of the Duke guys.
Yeah.
He spent it at Bryant, but
it's a different. It wasn't a COVID year.
It
was because of the scandal that wasn't at Duke. They canceled their season.
I do remember this 30 for 30. Yeah.
All right, we got to take one more break, but I don't need you to hang around if you got places to be. Patrick Stevens at Discourse, D1S Course. What's the schedule look like for you this week, sir?
Headed up to Philadelphia for a little bit of a field trip tomorrow, going to see George Mason and St. Joe's, making the trip over to Towson on Thursday. They have Northeastern in town, and then Marquette.
Things really coming together for Towson.
Things are coming together for Towson basketball right now. And, they've beaten Drexel, they've beaten Wilmington, they've beaten Charleston. So they've beaten the 3 best teams in the CAA besides themselves.
And backed it up with a short turnaround on the road against Delaware on Saturday.
So, all the stuff that we were talking about with them for, can you get a top 4? Well, it certainly looks like they can get themselves a top 4 seed. The funny thing is that you look at what they've done. They had the game where they couldn't score at Monmouth. They're still getting Nenda Tark kind of acclimated. Didn't play great defensively up at Northeastern. So seeing them kind of get a payback game there should be interesting. And then, the rest of that league is still really, really jumbled. And the last, right now, there are 6 teams tied at 4-4.
That's wild. That's
so
stay above the fray. Stay above.
You really do want to stay above that, and below that is the teams that have to play on Friday at the CAA tournament. Northeastern being one of them at 3-5 in the league. So you really don't want to take 2 losses to a team that's just scuffling to do that. Now I think Northeastern is better than that, and they're certainly really well coached. But at the moment, Towson would be the number 2 seed if the tournament started right now. So it doesn't, and there's a lot of basketball to play. Thursday is simply the midpoint of conference play for them, but I do think that they are in really, really good shape, and clearly I think the best hope in the area to make the NCAA tournament.
No doubt. All right, sir. Really appreciate you as always coming in and hanging out with us for this.
Pleasure as always.
When we come back in, we will look over what it's not a lot. There's not a lot happening tonight. No local teams in action, but we'll cover it. We'll get tubular next. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
Hey, it's Jeremy Kahn. This postseason, bet in person at the Green Turtle Bet Park Sportsbooks with locations in Canton and in Towson, and enjoy the best in-class sports wagering experience at their state-of-the-art facilities, bringing an unmatched sports betting thrill.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
There's so much focus on sports betting these days, but I want to talk about an area that nobody wants to gamble on. Where you choose to go out and spend your hard-earned dollars to eat. The Costas Inn is no gamble at all. The quality on their menu is outstanding, and the value is off the charts with a great and varied list of specials Monday through Friday. And the staples of the menu, whether it's salads, burgers, fish, they're all fantastic. And I haven't even mentioned the crabs or crab cakes yet. So check out the menu for yourself at CostasInn.com. When choosing a place to dine, never gamble on the food you put in your belly. The Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard, or call 410-477-1975 for reservations and your steamed crab orders.
6 chicken tenders made from fresh, never frozen Royal Farms world-famous chicken, a family-sized order of Western fries, honey mustard dipping sauce, and a 2-liter bottle of Dr. Pepper. It's Royal Farms' new Tucker's Tenders Meal. It's Justin Tucker's favorite, and at only $19.99, it'll be your favorite meal, too. The new Tucker's Tenders Meal, available only at Royal Farms. Now you can kick back, relax, and eat like a champion. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis, ajmichaels.com.
Hungry? With 7 locations throughout Maryland, Glory Days Grill is always right around the corner. They have wings, burgers, salads, sandwiches, and drinks to satisfy everyone, as well as tons of televisions and sound delivered right to your phone. Whether you're a Ravens fan or rooting for one of those other guys, Glory Days is the best place to watch football or whatever your favorite sport is. While you're there, be sure to check out Goose Flight's Lager, named in honor of legendary Raven Tony Goose Siragusa. $2 of every can is donated to the Goose Flights Foundation. Glory Days Grill. Great food, good sports.
Stan the Fan, Charles, Ross Grimsley, Luke Jackson got together yesterday for a baseball conversation. If you missed it, find it at facebook.com/PressBoxSports. Click on the videos tab, go to youtube.com/PressBoxOnline or PressBoxOnline.com/video to check it out. Stan the Fan, Charles, Ross Grimsley, and Luke Jackson. All right, we are winding down. Thanks again to Patrick Stevens. Thanks to all of the coaches who joined us this morning. As I said, if today wasn't for you, I don't know why. First of all, you probably didn't make it to this point, so I don't know why I'd be talking to you any longer. But I enjoy doing this. It's one of the things that I say. Like, for a lot of people, the end of football season is panic. Look, man, I'm bummed, But we'll just continue to cover Baltimore sports. And there'll be a lot of football involved with that, obviously, looking about what the decisions are going to be for the Ravens personnel-wise. Does Mike McDonald take one of these jobs? We know Joe Ortiz is gone.
Do they lose their entire defensive staff?
Yeah, a lot of it. I mean, we talked about it yesterday. Like, are they trying to tell these guys, like, hey, don't take a job yet? Zach Orr is going to interview with the Packers for their defensive coordinator job. So, would they be looking internally if Mike McDonald leaves? Is there another former Michigan connection they could bring in, or is that person going with? I don't know. I don't know, but we'll cover all of that. Like, that's what we're gonna do on a day-to-day basis. But we'll also talk college basketball. We'll talk college lacrosse. We'll do those things. We'll cover sports. We'll get maybe the Orioles will do something. Who knows? Probably not.
Arthur Smith looks like it is a done deal to the Steelers.
Oh, okay.
As their offensive coordinator.
I just don't care. I was like, is Arthur Smith getting a head coaching job again? Like, what? No, what was I going to bring up? Stan will be disappointed because Justin Turner is going to Toronto.
Yes.
He had been holding out
getting
hopes
closer and closer to the AL East.
All off season that there'd be a Justin Turner reunion in Baltimore, but that will not be the case.
He's one of Justin Turner, since probably the day that he left, I guess?
Probably. Well, I mean, Justin Turner was a star of stars for a little while.
Why did it?
Stan's point this year was more like, he is who he is at this point. The Orioles could afford this. Like, they're and Stan,
$12, $13 million deal. Yeah,
I don't know. I didn't see. You can tell me. Like, as pragmatic as he can be about it, was like, look, the guys you want aren't coming here, but they could do this. They did.
Anthony Weaver's interviewing for the Dolphins right now for their DC. Yeah.
They did Craig Kimbrell. That's what they did, and we'll see if there's another one in them. Tubular is brought to you today by. This one's brought to you by Goose Flights. Everybody knows how much we love Goose Flights. It is delicious. It is refreshing, and more importantly than that, it's helping people. As $1.98 from every can of Goose Flights that's sold goes to the Goose Flights Foundation as they look to provide non-emergency medical transport for those in need, to continue and honor the legacy of Tony Saragusa, as his daughter Sammy is running that foundation, and it's been a pleasure getting to know them and the work that they are doing, and we are so honored to be involved with that. You can get your Goose Flights all over town. Cans available at Alonzo's on Cold Spring Lane. Cans available at your neighborhood Glory Days Grill. And now, additionally, cans are also available, as if all of that wasn't enough. Cans are now also available at the Green Turtle and Bet Park Sportsbook in Canton for you to get your cans there. Plus, cans and six-packs available at both Costas Inn and Guilford Hall Brewery. Six-packs and cases available at the Wine Source in Hamden. Find out more, because I know that's a lot. Go look it up, pressboxonline.com/gooseflights. All right. Tubular tonight. I'm sorry. There's just not much.
College basketball night.
Sure, if you're invested in just games. If you don't you don't care about who the teams are. Big Ten hoops tonight on Peacock. Illinois, Ohio State at 7. Michigan State at 9. That's who Maryland plays next, Michigan State. Big Ten Network, Iowa, Indiana at 7 o'clock. Yeah, I mean, these games don't even stand out all that much, actually, now that I look at them.
And that one's on Peacock. Or no, that one's on Big Ten.
That one's on Big Ten Network. The Illinois, Ohio State, Michigan State are on Peacock. I don't know. There's a bunch of games. Marquette, Villanova, 7 o'clock on FS1. Yeah. There's a bunch of games. Go find them, glennclarkradio.com. NHL Network, Blue Jackets, Blues at 8 o'clock. TNT, Pacers, Celtics at 7:30. Sixers, Warriors. That's not a bad one. Tonight at 10 o'clock on TNT. The USA Network, Aston Villa, Newcastle United at 3:15, and then WWE NXT at 8. A big night non-sports-wise, obviously.
Obviously. It is the Season 11 premiere of Vanderpump Rules on Bravo.
The number of people in my life that watch Vanderpump Rules is truly disturbing to me. The number of people that are otherwise normal people that know about. There was apparently some cheating scandal last year on Vanderpump Rules.
I mean,
were talking to me about it like I should be aware of it. Like in conversation, we're just like, "What do you think about I don't
Lisa Vanderpump.
Tom. I was like, Tom.
He's an asshole.
My father? Like, who are you? Tom, like from the cartoons? Tom and Jerry? Like, what Tom are we talking about? And I don't even know if the guy's name is Tom or not, but that's just the first one that came to my head. They're like, no, from Vanderpump Rules. I'm like, is this just a topic that you think that like people discuss? Is that where we're at? Like, you just believe that people walk around talking about Vanderpump Rules, and then they were like, yeah, literally everyone watches it. And I was like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you anything. Like, I couldn't tell you who these people are. I couldn't tell you what they do. I couldn't tell you what network the show airs on. I am so dissociated from the Vanderpump Rules.
I think it's a restaurant.
If you say so, dog.
That way,
if you say so, man, this could be anything to me. They could be fashion people. They could be just heirs to something that they don't do anything for a living. They just put pictures up on Instagram or whatever. I don't know if they're good looking. I don't know. This is the blindest of all of my blind spots.
Well, they live in Hollywood, so you tell
me
if
they
they're
do. Maybe they're actors. I don't know. I'm just telling you, I have no association at all for the Vanderpumps and their rules. And I don't really know what their rules are. Like,
we got to watch to find out.
Apparently, no, they're allowed to cheat. I know that there was I say I'm completely dissociated. I know one thing. There was a cheating scandal. Someone cheated on someone. Who, what, when, where, why, I don't know. But there was cheating involved. Cheater, pumpkin eater
Scandival,
situation.
I think. That's what I'm...
If you say so, baby, I got nothing.
Netflix is going to have NASCAR Full Speed, new series. I don't think it's from, like, the same F1 and, like, the Drive to Survive thing. But
it is Tom Sandoval.
Well done. Oh, that's why they call it Scandival. Okay. Yeah. It is the Percy Jackson season finale on Disney Plus for anyone that was invested in that. Emma Stone's going to be on Stephen Colbert. And then Donald Glover and Maya Eskrine will be on Fallon, along with Bryce Dallas Howard.
Oh, what's her face from the Bears hosting Saturday Night Live
that
this weekend?
Correct.
I'm very excited about that. I love her. Yeah, she's awesome. That's very cool. I dig that.
Yes. Everyone's going around because Cranston was on Colbert last night, and it's for Argyle, that movie that star cast. I don't know. I have no idea what it's about.
Well, no, the idea is that she's an author.
Oh, that's right. Okay, now I remember.
Like what she's written has like is actually happening or something like that. But the movie itself doesn't look bad.
Well, I mean, yeah, because when you look at the cast.
Yeah, it's a good cast, 100%. I don't know. The premise is like, to me, but I don't know. I kind of look at it like this might not suck. I'm not trying to.
Middle school.
I'm gonna make a comparison. Is that what you think it is? You think it's a fantasy type of?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm trying to figure out what movies, what other movie I'd see this. Yeah, that's a good question. What other movie is out this weekend that I would want to? Dune is coming. Oh no, Dune isn't until March.
Yeah, Henry Cavill, Bryce Dallas Howard, Sam Rockwell, Bryan Cranston, Catherine O'Hara, Dua Lipa.
Oh, okay, now I'm back.
Sure, Ariana DeBose, who's definitely someone who I pretended like I knew about because she hosted Saturday Night Live in the past, but I've already forgotten why.
I haven't seen Mean Girls yet, so I don't know. Maybe that's the
John Cena, Samuel L. Jackson.
Well, now you have
Rob Delaney is part of this. I love Rob Delaney. I don't know. The trailers don't look bad to me, man. Like, they just don't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they don't, but
I don't know. All right. Very good. We done? Can we wrap up? It's 12:30.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Find everything else at GlennClarkRadio.com. Tubular was also brought to you by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today. Thanks today to Patrick Stevens. Thanks to all of the area lacrosse coaches, Charley Toomey, Peter Milliman, Chris Ryan, Shawn Nadelen, Joe Amplo, John Tillman, Ryan Moran. We'll get all of it up in the greatest hits section of the
Oh, my God, it's so good.
tab at GlennClarkRadio.com. If you put up with this, but you're looking for more Ravens, tonight, Reed and I will be, and Griffin will be there, over on 105.7 The Fan from 7 to 9. We'll do plenty of Ravens then. Anything tomorrow?
Drew will be here.
That's it.
County Sports Zone Radio.
That's what we had. We had an extra day to line things up, and that's what we've got. You know what?
Big show.
I take it all back. Maybe we don't cover. Hey, never mind. Whatever. All right, whatever. hope stuff and things tomorrow. Thanks to everybody at Pressbox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including Live Casino and Hotel, Mother's North Grill, AJ Michaels, Guilford Hall Brewery, Royal Farms, Costa Sin, Superbook Sports, Glory Days Grill, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Follow us Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Tuesday evening. Go nobody. Duke sucks.